whole meeting. I will call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. Today's Tuesday, May the 19th, 2020. We have on the phone with us, we have Brian Lindsay, our city attorney. We have Councilor Beyondich on remote. We have Alex Spencer from Pantheon Computers for item number 1, and Lauren Johnson on the phone for item number 2. And Pam, because we were doing this remotely, for the record, would you please take the roll call?
Baraboo,
Present.
Paulson,
Present.
Friedlieb,
Here.
Beyondich,
Present.
Johnson,
Here.
Aaronzelli,
Here.
Cuffey.
Present. Thank you, Pam. Okay, is there anybody else online other than those that I mentioned? Okay, so everybody's ready to participate. In the audience right now is Matt Reed. Can we pull him up first? Okay, I'm going to turn the agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis, and we can move it around a little bit and based on who's here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I put on everybody's desk, and I did send a copy to you, Maya. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, a recommendation that we received from Matt Reed this morning about the library sidewalk. And this is a little bit of an urgency because they are working on it as we speak, actually. So Matt, if you want to come up and kind of talk about the project.
Matt Reed, good morning.
Morning, everybody. First of all, I very much apologize for the last-minute submittal. This came to me yesterday afternoon, actually, so I was hoping that we'd be able to get this on this meeting this morning for discussion. So what it is, excuse me, Britt handed it out. For the sidewalk in front of the library, if you recall, we have some decorative stamped colored sections of the sidewalk that are outlining standard concrete colored sidewalk. It's an aesthetic decorative type thing. And so when we had originally planned on it, we were looking at it, just pour the concrete and all would be well, just like a regular sidewalk, and that'll work fine. That said, when the contractor started looking at it a little closer, they came back with a recommendation that maybe we should consider installing some rebar and tying those panels together. So the decorative ones are a little narrower. They do have a little more susceptibility to frost heaving, and so adding that rebar in would be actually a really good idea. So that came as a recommendation from the contractor, and I actually would recommend as well. I know it's an additional cost to the project, but I think it's money well spent. It was actually they revised it. It's a 2145, I think is what it is. It's a few bucks less than $2,200. But I think it made a lot of sense when we discussed it a little bit further, and just to try and prevent those panels from moving and having some differential movement there, I think it's a good idea. So I'd recommend that we proceed and authorize them to go ahead and do that for, I'd say $2,200, not to exceed.
And where would that money come from, Britt? Sherry, where would that money come from? We have it. Do we have the money for that?
Yes, I'd take it out of the contingency. There is enough in there.
Enough then for that? Okay, thank you. Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, I'm going to make the motion that we approve this expenditure up to $2,200 for the readjustment of the sidewalk panels at the library.
A move by Councilor Baraboo. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Councilor Johnson for discussion. Further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Because it's $2,200, would this normally fall under a expenditure the department head could make on their own, but because of the current circumstances, that's why it's coming to us?
Because it's a contract change order.
Okay.
If it wasn't a change order, I would just normally,
We'd just do it, okay.
because
And
it does change their contract, I need the council's approval to
we
change
can
that.
authorize that today and make it official next Tuesday, and they can move forward.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, this will be just quick. I agree 100% because I had new sidewalks, big 4-foot wide ones, put in my house with attached each section by rebar, and they have not moved in 7 years. So that makes a big difference. And I'm out in Valencia where it's all that old riverbed and heaving all the time. So this is a good thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Counselor Beyondich?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Go back to the top of the agenda. Item number 1 is Alex Spencer, Pantheon Computers, regarding our proposal for technology updates.
Mr. Spencer, you're on.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Already an outline that I created here. I try to keep it as brief as possible. Luckily for all of you, I am not a technician, so I am here to explain what has happened and what we need to do here moving forward. In your outline, you'll see the course of the last 6 months here, we've had a bit of an uphill battle just getting some things removed from CompuDyne support, and a onslaught of like little technology upgrades that we've done along the way. So the first kind of chunk of the things that we did back in December was to get you kind of into our support system, and then we took care of replacing a couple initial switches and access points and a couple of other items that needed to be replaced, one due to age and two due to speed concerns around the city. As we've moved through the last 5 months from then, we've done little chunks along the way as things have happened. What we've seen over the last 5 months is we have network equipment dying, network equipment that's not entirely configured well, and network equipment that just has some age and some inherent slowness with that. Along with the little upgrades that we've done.
We lost you there, Mr. Spencer. We lost you.
At least think through or prepare.
Mr. Spencer, you're breaking up. We have to back up a little bit.
All right, can you guys hear me yet?
Yep,
Yep.
now we can hear you. Sorry, Alex, we had a little hiccup in our internet system again.
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. All right. So along with the basic upgrades we've done along the way, we've tried to plan and prepare ourselves for removing the servers from CompuDyne. Currently, you have 4 servers hosted in CompuDyne's data center, and we need to make a plan to address some of those. You have a couple that aren't supported by Microsoft anymore. One of those becomes a BCA compliancy issue with the police department. So we just need to make a plan to move some of those forward. So we've started to set up at least a server room at City Hall to prepare ourselves for that. Any questions on what we've done so far?
Any councilors have any questions at this time for Mr. Spencer? None, Mr. Spencer. Councilor Beyondich, do you have anything you want to ask or add to this proposal so far?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please continue, Mr. Spencer.
All right. So then if I fast forward to the initial projects, initiatives that we have here, our main focus in this project is to remove the servers from CompuDyne support. A few reasons for that. Obviously, we're paying CompuDyne to host those servers. So I know there's a monthly obligation that goes to that. And 2, we need to address some of the imported items from Microsoft. We've also, in the last week here, ran into an instance where you're running out of storage on those servers and CompuDyne support. So the city's email was actually down for a period of time last week because we ran out of storage on one of those servers. So few reasons we need to move this forward. That's our focus on this proposal here. you'll see we have 3 main servers going in place. One is a File ID server for the entire city, not the police department. The police department is separated there. Finance server is your Cassell server. That's a dedicated server for that. And then the police department has to have its own File ID server for BCA compliancy. So that's what those 3 servers are.
Okay, Mr.
From
Spencer.
there,
Go ahead.
yep.
Just one question on the police servers. You know, once these upgrades take place and the police department has their service in place moving forward, and in the event that the police department moves to another facility, is that going to have any effect?
Actually, we've set this up in a way that it would be able to just move to a new facility.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor Paulson has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I have, are these cloud-based servers, or are they actually physical servers?
So we worked through that with Britt a little bit initially. What we're looking at today is actual physical servers. There's a draw to cloud-based servers for a lot of reasons, and if I were to be straightforward, cloud servers would make our life a little bit easier, but they don't make a whole lot of sense to the city as the city operates today, because between all of your locations. It does a lot of sense that everybody in the city has to go out to the cloud to bring something back. You have the infrastructure, host servers, and get faster speeds and better performance that way. So that's why we're looking at physical servers.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Anyone else have a question for Mr. Spencer so far? Counselor Beyondich, any other questions or comments so far?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please continue, Mr. Spencer.
Good questions. So once we have the 3 new servers in place, the bottom item on page 3 there is to upgrade the police department's backup system. Right now, if the police department server were to go down for any reason, let's say hardware failure, things like that, the police department would be down for a period of time. And obviously the critical services that they provide, we want to be able to make sure that we can get them up and going much quicker than their current plan. So we would put this backup disaster recovery plan in place to be able to get them back up and going in a matter of 10, 15 minutes rather than probably a full day. So to have the police department not able to log into PCs for a full day is not an ideal scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that would take care of page 3 then. On page 4, the last item that we need to remove from CompuDyne is email. So right now, the city's email resides on a dedicated email server. Couple things, we're running out of storage on that server. That's the one that was down last week. Also, it is not compliant with the BCA as it sits today. For the reason that the police department's email resides on the same hardware as the city's email. And so our proposal is to move email to a cloud-based service. Most of that's around a financial lens on that. We have 95% of our clients in this cloud-based service for our email. Our other city governments that we support are doing this same system. So it seems to make the most sense financially to move email to a cloud-based service. So that's what we're proposing here. A couple notes on that. When we do move email, our recommendation is to move to a dedicated state domain name. So ci.virginia.mn.us. Likewise, the police department, we would recommend moving to a pd.virginia.mn.us. There's some technical conversation we can have about, well, can we still support the current domains and things like that? We can, but we want to move the main mail to those dedicated domains. They're harder to spoof, harder to impersonate you. As a city government, that is important. So we believe that's the right move. That would get email taken care of, and that would be the last service that we would remove from CompuDyne. And then from IT support perspective, we are out of CompuDyne's world of support.
And
Last item on our list there is just, there's a couple other switches that need to be replaced around the city. We've seen a particular model of switch around the city so far fail due to age. And so we want to proactively replace the others on that list.
okay, thank you. One question, this is Larry Cuffey, Alex. The question for me is that if we trigger action on this proposal, how long would it take to do that, number one? And how long, and that would just go to connect to the second point is, will we finally be, done with Compudyne?
Yeah. So the action item or the action plan or the timeline on our project plan here from initiation to completion is probably 90 days in total. But our team is dedicated to moving those servers as fast as possible because we want to get you not paying Compudyne for that service if you're gonna do this project. So I would say you're onto our servers within 60 days. Done paying Compudyne for that service after 60 days. And then from there, the last item, then Compudyne's world is would fall into CTC's proposal for fiber and phone. So the answer is yes, we would be done with Compudyne as long as we also move forward with the CTC proposal. So.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, what is going to be the difference in cost on this particular project once we get the conversion monies done? What kind of savings are we going to have per month from you compared to Compudyne?
The savings will really come back to the amount that you're paying Compudyne, which, Britt, I don't have those numbers handy by chance.
Do you know, Britt?
Yes, actually, it's in the packet. Part of the packet for the CTC, the next item. Right now, we pay $3,500 a month for hosting.
Will be,
I'd say roughly at least $2,500 a month.
we'll save 1,000 a month. We say about 12,000 a year then.
Yep.
That's worthwhile. Because we'll have an upfront cost. What's the upfront cost for this whole conversion, Spencer?
Alex, what's the total of all this together?
I got
I'm gonna pull that up real quick.
62,585.
Unfortunately, I didn't put that total on there. So
Is it just all those columns added up? Okay, it's 62,585. If
Yep,
I figured
that
it
would
out right.
Okay. Did you get your question answered, Counselor Bearable, to your satisfaction?
Yeah, if I'm close on that money.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for clarification, our overall hard costs are $62,585 approximately, and then there is whatever the monthly, $116 a month, $174 a month, whatever those are. So how much in monthly fees would there be then, Alex?
yeah, it would just be that $290 from Microsoft would be the
Okay.
additional.
Okay.
Pantheon support doesn't change. So
Okay, that's what I thought was the original contract. Then in our capital improvements budget for 2020, have we budgeted any amount of this, knowing last year that we were going to probably be needing these services?
Sherry, would that come out of capital equipment purchase, or is that a different, that's a different line item?
It's a different line item. There is no capital equipment in each department. That's been zeroed out for 2020. This would be under the data fund code.
Did we budget for 2020 for this amount at all?
Not this particular amount. We were not aware of this particular amount, but we do have a very high budget in there. Compudyne's been very expensive.
Agreed. And then the last question that I have, Alex, is that I think we're paying either about $3,900 for data migration, and I don't know how often that happens when we get the schedule of bills, But over the next 60 to 90 days then, would Compudyne be migrating that data or would Pantheon?
Pantheon will be migrating that data.
So then we would
Thankfully,
be
Compudyne
saving,
has given us access.
so we would need access from Compudyne in order to do that data migration, which would save us an additional, whatever that is. I don't have the schedule of bills in front of me, but I want to say it's around $3,900. So we would save that going forward as well. That'd be correct?
Yeah, 3,600 is from us.
No, that's from Compudyne. What they charge us,
Oh.
it's kind of a line item for data migration, and I don't know if it happens monthly or quarterly.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
guess-
That would go away.
Okay.
I believe that's a monthly charge, yes.
Okay, so again, then we'll be saving additionally.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Counselor Johnson, and then we'll back to Counselor Bearable. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This system's gonna pay for itself in about a year, the crossover, okay? So my concern then is moving forward, that we not get into this in 3 to 5 years when all of our switches are bad. Is that built into our contract with these upgrades and that kind of thing? Or is that something you'll be able to let the administration know to budget for before we need to do it in an emergency situation?
Yeah, it's a good question, Councilor Johnson. Typically with my other cities, what I do is I would work with the administrator to plan these things out 4 years in advance. So what we really want to do is we really want to have an eye on the ball next time around, and so that we can set these in the right budgets and things like that. So yes, we're going to be way ahead of this next time.
That's an excellent answer. And then my other question is, have you or do you work with CTC and how does that relationship work?
I've had initial conversations with Lauren on the phone here from CTC. Their relationship with the partners that they work with is very similar to our ideal relationship with our other ISPs that we work with. So basically what would it look like is the city's support would go through us, and then we would work directly with CTC on any support issues. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, Alex, I just have one other question for you. The current Surface Pro 3 computers we have, is everything with this changeover going to be compatible so we don't lose any things on this particular system that we use individually as counselors?
Yep. So everything will be migrated over. So we should not have any loss of any data or anything like that. Ideally, what we're going to have to, my biggest concern right now is just making sure that we minimize downtime or the effect on the city. And so we will be planning around the city's operations to do these cutovers, but you won't have any loss of data or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. We can still continue to use these for the time being then.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I think that bears another little bit to add on to what you said, Counselor Bearable. You know, we look at the age of our laptops, and so we would be looking for recommendations for our city staff, and maybe in coordination with you, Alex, about, you know, an upgrade in our laptops if that's necessary, in which to do so. So that would be part of our purchasing with our budget. And I would refer to Sherry that if we were to do that and it was recommended moving forward, that would come out of the data budget. Is that correct? Or not?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Spencer, anything else? Mr. Spencer, anything else?
Nope, I am good as long as all the questions are answered.
Okay, hang on for a moment. Does any counselor have any other questions or comments? Counselor Johnson?
I was just gonna make a motion to move forward with this process and authorize the up to $65,000 from the data budget to get this done as soon as possible.
Okay, move to approve moving forward to the city council. This proposal by Pantheon Computers. The motion is by Counselor Johnson.
I'll support.
And supported by Counselor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Beyondich, do you have any further discussion on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, I did get the motion, Mayor,
You,
sorry.
you did get the motion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Next item on the agenda is Lauren Johnson of CTC regarding the information proposal for an upgrade to the city's phone and internet systems.
Good morning, Lauren. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you all this morning?
We're looking good.
Good. Good. Well, thank you for inviting me back.
Hello,
Yeah, can you hear us
Can you all
now?
hear me? There's a little bit of,
this is Pam.
yeah, a little bit of feedback. I think maybe if the others on the line could mute their Zoom login, it wouldn't provide that feedback.
I just have one comment for the counselors. I have a lot of construction going on in my office today, so if you could speak real loud, it's kind of hard for me to hear when you're talking. So if you could talk a little louder during the construction, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, Lauren, please continue.
Yeah, so again, appreciate you inviting me back this morning. And, I know we reviewed things during our last meeting and provided the side-by-side. So not sure if we want to go through again line items or if there were additional questions that wanted to be, addressed this morning. Britt, do you have some direction on that?
The council had asked that we prepare more information, which was the information that we had sent to you, Lauren, about what our vendors are and how much we're paying monthly, which the council has been provided. So maybe we go to questions from the council, if anybody has questions.
Okay, thank you. Any councilor have a question, concern, or comments about the CTC proposal? Councilor Johnson.
I checked in with Britt on some of this. One of the things that I liked the idea of is that the new system would allow people to call City Hall, and then City Hall could transfer or we would all, counselors could have individual voicemail boxes, and there's a lot of technology upgrades that this system will provide. And I think that's one of those things that'll really help as we move forward, being able to provide citizens with more access to individuals and yet still protecting our families and that kind of stuff. So I spent some time looking at this, and I was astounded and didn't realize that we're using 4 different providers across all of our city access points, and that's mind-blowing to me. So I think this is a great proposal, and I think, again, this is one of those things that my question would be, as we move forward, how will CTC make sure the city is staying current and not falling behind, and our staff have antiquated systems that they can't transfer from one building to another? How will you do that moving forward?
Lauren, did you get that question from Councilor Johnson?
She is talking. Our internet went down again. Sorry, Lauren. Hang on one second. Okay, I think we should be good. Hang on one more second, Lauren. Sorry. Okay, give it a try.
Okay.
Still not working there, Lauren. Lauren, can you hear us now?
Me now?
Finally, yes. And now we can't hear you again, so Let's give it another shot.
Don't hear any of us.
What was that, Pam?
And usually
Yeah, I can't hear either one of you. Neither one of you are coming through.
Okay, Pam, try again.
Well, we could certainly do that. Were you ready to pull? We're ready to pull the trigger?
Yeah, Britt, can you hear me on Zoom?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. That's okay. So I'll be quick, and if I fall off again, I'll call the 800 number. But when CTC puts in place these solutions, they are long-term solutions, meaning similar to what Pantheon does is we would connect with you prior to the existing term being up to either renegotiate pricing, look at different hardware. If we were to have into play, we would actively reach out to you and swap that out as well. And so that way you're not sitting with antiquated equipment for a long period of time. And so it's a very proactive approach. I think to the point of having fewer providers, a big benefit would be this would really allow us to kind of create a really good solid relationship with your IT vendor to ensure that going forward, from an ISP perspective and then from an IT perspective, we're kind of on that same path of future proofing things to make that you're set for the future growth of the city.
Okay.
That answers my question very well, and I think this seriously just demonstrates what our frustration is what just happened over the last 3 minutes, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. We'll kind of chew the fat for a minute until Councilor Bearable gets back. He had his light on. He might have a question. But just let me give you a personal example, if I may, Lauren. In the current system in the mayor's office, the phone rings. And if I'm not in the office or I'm at a meeting or somewhere else, then that moves over to my cell phone. I have it hooked up comes to my cell phone. But there's such a huge delay there that people aren't, they wait, they think that, I'm not there, and they hang up. So a lot of times I try to answer when it rings, the first time it rings, and then they've hung up already. So this is going to help alleviate that and streamline that and give every councilor, elected official, the opportunity to have that for them in this new system. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. And there's a couple of different ways. We actually worked with a few your IT team to talk through potential programming. And you can actually either just do a forward to your cell phone, which is what you're doing now, or we do have an application, a cell phone application that's called a session, which would allow your desk phone and your cell phone to simultaneously ring.
Right.
The benefit of using that application is that you can actually see that it's an incoming call coming from the city as opposed to a personal call. And then if you needed to make a call out to somebody, you can utilize that app to reflect the city's caller ID, not your personal cell phone.
Excellent.
So it's really kind of a way of bridging that, that gap, especially for some of the other cities we work with. Their police officers utilize that application all the time. And so there's not random cell phone numbers floating out in the community. You can really kind of manage, how you want the caller ID of different departments to be reflected within the community. So it's a really, really technology forward system for the people that want to utilize that. Or if there are people on your staff that want something a little bit more traditional, we can, put that in place as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Bearable.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Lauren, I had to step away for a minute. Now, is this application go to our personal phones then, or do we have separate phones through the city?
It depends on how you want to use that. Some businesses, some of the cities will use the app on only city issued cell phones. a lot of businesses that, we've been working through this transition of getting people, working from home. And so they've been issuing apps on personal cell phones. It's because it's data-based. So the application is data-based. It doesn't need to be specified if it's city or personal. It just kind of depends on how you want to be able to disperse that application.
Okay, so if we had it sent, because my personal cell phone is out there to the public. So if I chose to use that, is there a cost to me on this, or is this all cost borne by the city, or is it a free app?
So if you had people outside of the existing extensions that we've proposed, so, let's say you did want to issue that app to the council members, or, maybe you've got additional teams that are, assisting in a project for the city, that can be issued to them at an individual cost. The cost would be $6 per application, but that's something too that can be taken away as a cost.
Okay.
So for instance, if you wanted to issue it and then somebody uses it for a couple months and they don't use it, that cost would just go away.
So we have the option then as council to use that app or not that app, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
And Lauren,
You're welcome.
If I may, Larry Cuffey, I'll give you an example. The city council a few years ago, there was some discussion about the mayor and the councils having his phone issued to him, and it was a lot of opposition to that. And so, from my perspective, I have a personal cell phone, and if the mayor's office it rings to me, it costs me extra money on my data, and I had to upgrade my data because it gets so many telephone calls that my data plan had to increase, and I have to pay extra for extra data for that. Not paid by the city because the council voted not to allow that to happen, and I don't have a problem with that. So, in this particular instance, how would that work with the rest? Is this just that $6 a month application, and then how does that affect your data on a personal phone as opposed to an issued phone?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, if you have a city issued cell phone and you're on like a city data plan, a cellular data plan, the app would utilize the data that you have set up for that city plan. The data that it uses is very, very minimal. It's not like it's a live streaming service. It's basically just accessing an app like you would if you hopped on, social media or if you checked an email. So if on a city-owned cell phone, it would utilize the city's data plan. And then if it were on a personal cell phone, it would just utilize that personal data plan.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So does this help in mitigation or compartmentalization? Say if there was a freedom of information request, does that kind of help separate, this app would help separate what was being conducted, if you have a personal cell phone, what's being conducted on the behalf of the city business versus your personal business?
Well, I apologize. There was a lot of feedback there. Could you repeat that question?
So does this help mitigate or compartmentalize, say if we were up against a freedom of information request, or does that app then mitigate that?
Not working very good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
must be out
apologize.
again.
Okay,
I'll text Britt.
we got three different people talking at one time. So Pam, you first.
Oh,
Pam,
I
you
was
first.
just noting that it was static the whole time Councilor Paulson was talking.
Yeah, would you please repeat the question once again?
I can repeat that. Pam, can you hear me okay?
Pardon?
Not kind of soft, actually.
What the question was that she's asking is if we had like a data practices request or a Freedom of Information Act, where does the data lying? Is it on the city phone, or is it on the app, or is it on that person's phone?
You can actually pull recordings directly from a dashboard that would be accessible for your IT team. And so if you needed to pull recordings, is that kind of what you're asking about?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yep. You can pull that from that would be set up for the individuals on your team that need it.
So you're basically separating your personal from anything to do with the city by utilizing this app.
If you make calls and receive calls from the app, that still can be retrieved. If you set up just a forward, so if you were to do what you're doing now, so for instance, if my extension were to ring and it's forwarded off to my cell phone, not to the app, then that's now just personal information.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Anybody else have a question or comment? I can tell you, Lauren, that I have had data requests for my cell phone for calls that I've had. This was a couple years ago for city business. And so because I used my personal phone, because the city didn't allow me to have a company phone, I had to disclose every phone call I had, even whether it was personal or not, because they were intertwined. And that's a problem, because nobody, not that they could see whatever I talked to. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I mean, there wasn't any information but they were looking for something to disclose, try to find something, that the city was trying to do something secretively or whatever the case may be. And so I think with Councilor Paulson's question, I want to make sure that, if we are to, have this application form, that whatever data practices information is available, will only be disclosed based on city business. But if it's intertwined with your personal cell phone, the question was, how does that get separated out? So I think you've answered my question. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, I have a question too on this, Lauren, because I keep my Surface Pro 3 city computer or tablet, whatever you want to call it. No personal business goes on. It's all city business. I don't use it for any personal business. So if a customer were to call me, or a citizen were to call me on my own private phone, and we have an individual conversation, that's not, how do I want to say it, pertinent to data practices, correct? Or is it on that? If they ask me a question, how does that work?
It would. Yeah, it would not be. So there's two different voice switches. That's kind of the best way to describe it. And so
Okay.
anything that would be tied into our system. So if you're using the physical desk phone or if you're using the app, all of that voice traffic is managed by CTC's voice switch. If you're making or receiving calls from your cell phone, even if you have that app on your phone, but you're not utilizing that app, that's using, Verizon or AT&T's voice switch. So it's completely separate.
Okay, because I use AT&T switch. So, okay. I answered my question. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments by the council? Are we looking to take action today? We are looking to take some type of action today. So if there are no questions or further comments, I'm looking for some action by the council.
Mayor, I do have one more quick question.
Yes, Councilor Bearable.
Thank you. Lauren, as we're increasing the internet and capacities up here for the higher speeds, is that going to be any effect on your system at all? Because we're looking at a lot of changes coming this direction with grants and stuff out of the state and other places. The speeds are going to probably be, 100 times more down the road? Will your system be able to handle all this for us?
Yes. Yep. So we're proposing, just from a lit services perspective, a gig by gig symmetrical. So that's 1,000 by 1,000. Currently you have up to 100 by 100. And so from a capacity perspective, you're going to have, far more superior bandwidth available to you for those changes that will be coming into play.
It's going to be a whole lot better for a lot of city employees. We're going to be very, very happy.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I apologize. It cut out a little bit there.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So what's the bottom line of what we need to write a check for upfront, but we need to approve, because I see a lot of numbers and I just want to make sure that we have the cash to write the check to make this happen.
And Lauren, jump in if I'm getting this wrong. So I suggest that we move forward with the contract with CTC for internet and phone service in the amount of monthly $5,152.55. And then we have a non-recurring capital cost of $13,500 for equipment. Is that correct, Lauren?
Correct.
So
Those-
initial,
It is, yes.
initial 13.5 and then the monthly fee.
Yes.
All right, thank
And
you.
our current
Do
monthly fee
those-
that we're paying is $5,894. So,
Do we need to do those as two separate motions?
no, it can be one, because it'll be one resolution that'll list the non-recurring cost of $13,500 and then the monthly fee of,
All right, so I'll make a motion to direct staff to create a resolution for the 13,500 initial non-recurring technology upgrade, and then the contract for the 51, 52, 55 moving forward for CTC services.
I'll support, Mayor.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Bearable. Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, I did, Mayor.
You did? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Counselor Beyondich, anything else to add before we move for a vote?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering if maybe you could walk me through the actual, where it says the install is $110,500 minus $97,000, and then that's where we're getting our total of $13,500 with a monthly of 51, 52, 55. Could you just explain what that, is that the install total, the 13,000 plus the 5,100 a month?
Correct. Yep. So the 110,500 includes our technicians coming on site doing the phone installs. This also includes bringing fiber to the Tennis for All building, Olcott Park, the senior center, wastewater treatment plant, and then any additional equipment or anything like that that's included with that fiber construction. And so CTC's cost in working with the contractors through Northeast Service Cooperative would be that $110,500. We would provide you with a $97,000 credit, which would then be a $13,500 CapEx for the city.
Okay, thank you so much for that explanation.
Okay, thank you, Counselor
welcome.
Paulson. Thank you, Lauren. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
thank you so much, Lauren.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good morning.
Next item on the agenda is the review updated job description for the Public Works Director. And unfortunately, I should have bolded it or made it some kind of note on there. What was added to the job description for Public Works Director was under the responsibilities, subheading number 6 and number 8, establishes and maintains positive working relationships with city and city employees.
Okay, thank you. Personnel item 3, Public Works Director. The Finance Committee met last week. In fact, all councilors was present at that meeting, so it was moved from personnel to the Committee of the Whole for further discussion and action. Counselor Bearable.
Since we didn't actually act, you want a motion for the council meeting, correct, Brett?
Correct.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the current Public Works Director job description as written.
Okay, moved by Counselor Bearable to approve the job description for Public Works Director. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is number 4, review the job description for the event coordinator. And this also was forwarded from the Personnel Committee last week.
And I know we had some significant discussion about this job description and how that event coordinator would work under the direction of the public Park and Recs director. And so I think we vetted out most of that. All the councils were present at that time, and it was moved from the Personnel Committee to the committee whole for full action to move forward with the council. And we have Councilor Johnson.
I was processing the contractor process. My question is, would the contractor have the ability to direct city staff when they were doing things? How does that relationship work when it comes to setting up, or what does that look like?
Well, sure, you can ask that's an HR person, but I would think that because they work under the direction of the Public Works or Park and Rec director, that they would, any directing staff has to come from there, that the event coordinator coordinates the events and schedules the things. But I'll leave that up to you to answer Councilor Johnson's question, Sherry.
Thank you, Mayor. No, you said it very well. It would fall under Brian, the Park and Rec. The event coordinator would obviously be working with the Director of Park and Rec. And so hopefully him or her would express to Brian, this is what I need, this is how it's got to work.
So I guess my
Directive
question
there.
comes down to the day of an event, Brian's on vacation, and the skirting was set up wrong. Can the coordinator, this position, say to the staff, you need to move that from side A to side B? How would that relationship work out?
How does it work now, Brian?
Well, what I'm saying is Brian's not here.
Yeah, but how, when you're not here, how does that work now? Do the employees just do it?
Most part.
Okay, so
Well,
it would need
but
some
my-
direction. I agree with you. I don't
You
understand
know,
what you're
you
saying.
understand where I want to make sure that when we get to that point, that
Yeah, I can.
if, because I understand how it's supposed to work, the events coordinator says to Brian, this is how I want the room laid out. The bride gets there that morning and goes, I don't like that color, I want black. Brian's gone. Now, who changes the skirting that morning without Brian being there to direct the staff? I understand the chain would go from the coordinator or the contractor to Brian to the staff, but if Brian's not there, how are we following union protocol?
Well, I mean, as far as directing staff, it has to come from a supervisor, obviously, right? It has to direct the delegation responsibilities. We'll go to our city administrator, because when Brian's not there, the city administrator oversees the entire operation. So either by a phone call or whatever the case may be, to ensure that direction. But I agree, understand what you're saying, but this is a contract position, and I'll say that this should not be a union position, my perspective. This should not be an internal position. It should not. For a variety of reasons. And I know we've discussed that. We have a lot of discussion about that at the last meeting. But Sherry, would you please answer Councilor Johnson's question?
Sure. This event coordinator is going to be over an area. It's not directly connected to Brian's job duties as a director. And I totally agree. If Brian's not there, hopefully he's going to have that trusty phone system, and we can call him, or we'll, get a hold of Britt. But this
Excuse me?
event coordinator is not going
Hello?
to be, oops.
Yes, Pam, what?
Hello?
Yes?
I cannot hear anything right now.
Well, why not?
It went very staticky, and then it's like it's very quiet. So something's not working right with the speaker or the microphones or something.
Okay, I'm going to have Councilor Johnson repeat his question, and then we'll get you the answer, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question is about logistics of communication between a contractor and city employees when the supervisor isn't there, because we can't have a contractor directing city employees. Is that correct? So the day of, and I know this is further out, but I see this being a challenge when a staff is asked to do something that city staff needs to do by the contractor, and I'm sure eventually that relationship will morph. But to start out, I really want to make sure we have a very clear plan that if a room is set up incorrectly according to the event plan, and Brian as the supervisor is not available, you know, if it's the morning of a wedding and the bride isn't happy, she's not going to want to wait for 3 or 4 hours to get a hold of an administrator or a deputy administrator, or I want to make sure we have a plan so that the event coordinator can have the room changed without there being challenges with the chain of command from a contract employee towards a union employee.
But you get that, Pam?
Yes, I did, Mayor.
Okay, now we'll get you an answer from Sherry. Sherry?
Thank you. Well, for one, I think what we need to do is clarify that the event coordinator, this contractor, is not going to be the bride's wedding planner. That event coordinator is going to bring in events like that. This person is not going to be micromanaging every event. They're going to go out there and bring in hairball, but they're not going to run the hairball event. So what's going to happen is they're going to bring these events in, and who's ever in charge of that event, Mr. Hairball or whoever, the wedding, the bride, she's going to be working right with Brian, or, hey, this is how I want my wedding, and hopefully she has a wedding planner, and they're going to work directly with Brian and the staff. I think we will be expensing this person quite heavily if that person is not only going to have to be out there bringing in events and being a PR, but also having to do all of the events. It's going to be way too much.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor, did you get that, all that, Pam?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So in the contract, it states supervision exercise may supervise or direct staff to help set up and coordinate events at the Miners Event Community Center, MEC. So maybe we should strike that.
We should strike
Maybe we should strike that portion of it, just to
Yep.
have some clarification with what Counselor Johnson is I guess, assuming that that could be a potential problem for the contractor to be directing city staff. That would be my only recommendation. Otherwise, I'm comfortable with the contract and with the language of the job description.
Yes, I think that should be stricken as well, or at the very least, directing staff. They can work with the staff, but they can't direct them to do anything. So I think that's a very good point. So let's make a note of that, please. Pam, did you get all that? The request of an adjustment made to this job description that Counselor Paulson had that question about striking that one part of the job description that says direct staff?
No, I did not. Bart, bits and pieces, sorry.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Pam.
So it's to adjust the job description with what language?
To remove the supervision exercised paragraph.
I would suggest changing that from may supervise or direct staff to coordinate with staff.
That's all you need.
Perfect.
Thank you, Brian.
Did you get that, Pam?
Yeah, I can look it up and see what.
Yep, I
language
can get
is.
you a new copy of this too for the packet.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Pam. Counselor Baraboo.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm in 100% agreement that this has to be a contract position because they're going to be going all over the country pulling these events and stuff in. We don't have time to be messing around with staff on this and stuff, and they're going to be on their own budget for a lot of this. They're going to give us a proposal with a dollar figure, and that'll include some form of how they reimburse for travel and et cetera. So I think that's the only way we can do this. Once they get the event set up, Brian has to get it scheduled with coordination with the event person, get it all set up. So that'll be between the two of them. So that's my personal opinion on this.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Baraboo. Okay, I don't think we have a motion yet. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just maybe could get one more clarification on the position description. There is no, when we put this out, we're going for an RFP, is that correct? Okay, so is there any type of a Or is that between the city then and the contractor that we hire in terms of a time frame? Like, is it a year contract, a 2-year contract, or a 5-year? And if so, does that need to be within this language here, or is that the secondary step after we choose the contractor?
A good question, and I wonder if we would get a better response if we had a clear time frame in there for somebody, that they knew that this is what they were getting into. So maybe we should set something in there.
And I'm open to that. It was just something I noticed.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Should that be part of the job description?
No,
A part of the RFP, when we do the RFP.
Part of the RFP, yes, but not part of the job description.
Correct,
So we're talking about the job description now.
correct.
But when
So
we go off
When we
for-
approve
but-
the job
but
description,
we
we
will
will
go
go
off
out
for
for
RFPs.
RFPs, and I need to know, am I putting for a 1-year term, 2-year term?
Right, yeah, okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, Counselor Freely, and then over to Counselor Johnson. Counselor Freely.
I don't know if I've read this entirely, but are we foreseeing this person like officed at the MEC, or is this somebody that could be in Massachusetts that's connected through technology?
Office at the MEC, that's the intent.
And so they will be engaged with staff in some capacity throughout their
Yes.
day?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Theoretically, kind of piggyback what Sherry was saying, that they'll have events, you know, that we're going to have this convention come in, they'll give this person a plan, person gives a plan to Brian, I need your staff to set it up like this. This is what they need. So there'll be a lot of talking with Brian.
but they'll be physically interacting and coordinating, I mean. they're
Correct.
not-
Their home office may not be in the MEC, but they will have an office or area in the MEC that they can use for whatever they need.
So they're coming and going to the MEC?
Coming and going, yes.
So they could be in Duluth
It could be in Duluth
or Minneapolis?
or Minneapolis.
Or Chicago?
Absolutely. I don't know that Chicago would happen, but,
Well,
because their job's not to be sitting in the building. Their job is to be out promoting the building,
physically,
physically, yes.
despite the technological advancements we have in connecting and communicating?
Well, as soon as we get everything connected, we'll be much better at technology advances. Yeah. I'm assuming, and then I don't want to write this person's duties for them. You know, they're a marketing person. They know how to do this. So they're going to have a plan and a method and how they're going to do this using social media, using advertising means. I'm going to trade shows saying, you know, you should have your event here because this is why. And
Okay, thank you.
You know, and it could be a firm, and so the firm may have to have an employee there, and then they may be from someplace else. But we have to have somebody physically there moving forward. So as you had indicated, that all the technology advanced, all that would be utilized, but in the event that couldn't be done, if they have to go to a trade show, I think it'd be prudent to do that in order to promote the MEC.
Just a quick follow-up
Sure,
question.
please.
So did we research to find out, like, does the Sanborn Center, does the Duluth Deck have that type of person?
They do.
They all have those kinds of people that are staffed at that facility?
They
just
do.
heard anecdotally at the last meeting that Sanford Center did not see a ton of revenue until they hired a planner, a marketing person, and then their revenue exponentially grew
Okay.
once they had somebody actively seeking events to come to the
Good,
area.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Freely. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to clarify, I'm all for this being a contract position. I'm not trying to do anything other than just clarify the relationships when we get there.
Yep, understandably so. Thank you. Anything else? Counselor Bearable has another question.
Yeah, Britta's absolutely right. I had a conversation with Bob from Kraus Anderson after that last meeting, and he was on the Sanford committee that set up the, how they're going to hire this outside coordinator and stuff. And he said exactly that to me, that their business tripled or quadrupled after they hired an event coordinator. There is another step in this process. Once the RFP process is done, we're going to have a separate specific contract on years and salaries and all that kind of stuff, out clauses on both ways, all that kind of stuff. So that's a whole separate issue down the road after we interview the people that apply for the RFPs. And if it's a firm, they'll have more than one person going someplace to help us. They just got to perform.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Bearable. Counselor Freely.
One more follow-up question. So this person is not a city employee? And so are we setting up a precedent now for hiring contracted services for other potential responsibilities within the city? Like conceivably, could you have a contracted public works director or a contracted park and rec director?
No, because they're in the MAPE contract.
They are unionized.
They are union positions.
And so the union has been in favor of this position
I
then?
don't know that answer.
And do we care? Okay,
This is a newly created position that doesn't fall within the bargaining unit specs
okay,
at this point in time.
all right.
We have the golf course already contracted. That's an example.
And the tennis building both, but, okay, thank you. Okay, Pam, did you get at least part of that conversation? Pam, you were still on the line? Okay, then we're just gonna move on forward then.
Sorry, Pam, I reset the system.
Yeah, the speaker keeps, I don't know, it keeps, like static, real loud static is going on, and then you'll come back in.
You know what, Pam, let me call
If
you.
there's
Let's take a brief
loose
second.
wire or something?
Let me give you a call. I'll call you on my cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of an MMO. Mickey Mouse operation. That'd be me, that'd be part of Mickey Mouse. I don't know which part, I would venture to say. Oh, boy. Challenges of technology. Okay, Pam, can you hear me?
I think it is too. Off the Zoom.
No, that's what she's done, but it's worse. Well, I'm as close to the microphone as I possibly can be, and you still can't hear me?
Yeah, cough a little. Yeah, if you're speaking loud and clear, it's good. So like Brett and Larry, I can hear you, but it's hard to hear everybody else.
Okay,
And
thank
I don't
you.
know if it crackles a lot. So I don't know if there's a loose wire or some connection there with anything. I don't know.
Okay, Pam, well,
It'll get really loud and then it's good. And then all of a sudden it just goes like I can hardly hear you. And my volume is like on 90.
okay, just to recap, Pam, can you hear me?
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, just to recap, we had some discussion about the contract versus the city employee and whether we're setting a precedent with respect to having this a contract basis. So that the discussion has currently, ended. And so we are now in the process of maybe taking some council action regarding the public, where are we? What's that? The event coordinator position. So that's where we're at right now. And so we're ready to take some council action. Councilor Beyondich, did you have any questions or comments before we move forward?
No, I've just been listening. I think the questions have been very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, what is the action that the council wants to take today? Counselor Johnson,
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the job description as amended in this meeting.
a motion by Counselor Johnson to move forward with the job description for the event coordinator with the amendment that's proposed. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is discussion of the hiring policy. It is in your packet so that we can determine, number one, the hiring committee for Public Works Director, and number two, the hiring committee for the Library Director positions, both which will be posted, hopefully, the first part. The Library Director has been posted. We have applications. Public Works, hopefully the first part of June.
Very good. Thank you. We had a lot of discussion at the Personnel Committee. We were all present at that time or was able to participate by Zoom. There's a lot of questions regarding what our current hire policy is, and I think it was the consensus of everyone at that meeting that we need to make some adjustment and changes. And so, Rick, do you have any recommended changes to this? Or Sherry, do you have any recommended changes to the current hiring policy yet? Or are you looking for some direction from the council? Or do you have some information based upon the conversation we had at the last personnel meeting? Sherry?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would like to hear what the council has to say. I mean, change is always good.
Okay, very good. I don't see anybody's lights on right now. I'm sure there will be. I guess my first, I would like to just make a quick comment that however we determine what the hiring committee is going to be for each position, obviously it has to be consistent. I do agree with whatever comments were made at the last personnel committee meeting that for whatever position that's available, if it's a public works director position or a library, whatever it is, that somebody from within that organization has an opportunity to participate in the interview process moving forward. So that being said, we'll move over first to Councillor Paulson and then on to Councillor Johnson. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think I would like to review in the actual regular employees section of the hiring policy, number 5, 6, and 7. And I think number 5 is the one that we had kind of zeroed in on at the last meeting. And my concern is more that there's only 3 people. So I think I would like to see that be a little bit more broadened. And I do have a question before we go into 5, 6, and 7.
Sure.
Is what was the original intent? I know when the hiring process was different, I think back in, I'd have to go back, I think it was 2016. It was right before I think Counselor Johnson and I started. I think that was when I found an email from Sherry. I think in 16 it was changed. And my question is, was there an issue with having interviews at more the department head level being in an open setting? Was there an issue with that? Can anyone maybe just explain that history a little bit? Because I'm more inclined to say, I don't know what the difference is. We stream live now. We're very transparent now. So maybe just give me a little history, if you don't mind, if someone could.
Well, I can give you just a little bit of information, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of controversy and some passion, let's say, in how this was determined. But I think the bottom line is that to limit it to the individuals, and Sherry, if you remember this from being part of that, there was a concern that if the public was to come to the meeting, not that it would be open to the public, and that they would have an opportunity to review and to see or to be physically present during this process. The issue was, well, then if they're publicly here, then they can ask any question of the candidate. So you might get 10, 15 people or whatever. from the public that wants to ask questions as well. And so to try to limit, what the questions are going to be, there was a question, should it be public or should this be the hiring committee moving forward in the initial stages, particularly when you're doing the regular employee process, and then so there was some discussion as to when an employee is hired, is the entire council involved in that? Is the general public there to answer questions? And when we did a sampling from other communities, they didn't do it that way either. So whether it's good or bad, in my particular instance, I think, it has to be changed. This is what we came up with. This was the consensus that I don't think anybody wanted, but that's what we live with. So does that help a little bit?
It does help a little bit, and I understand what where you're coming from on that, and maybe at the beginning stages, it doesn't necessarily need to be at that. But I guess just going forward, it's very limiting the language regarding, one member or, so what I'm saying is we're having a tough time sidestepping the quorum issue, and I think we'd have to check with our city attorney regarding what Councilor Baraboo was saying last time, and then what Britt was maybe saying as well, just what the legalities are of that. But I really would like to see more than just 3 people, even at that initial beginning process. And even if it would be whiting out the names of the person, the applicant, whiting out their names, whiting out all their personal information, presenting it to the committee to go forward to sift through between 3 to 5 resumes, so that it's private until maybe the actual interview process, until that part of it's public. But I think we can do it in a better way. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm trying to get down to the point of why it's making me uncomfortable to only have 3 people.
Which step are you referring to 3 people? Because step
Number 5.
Number 5 has 4.
Oh, but it's 1 counselor.
2 counselors. 1 member of personnel committee and 1 member of council.
Okay, maybe the other last one we got was different.
I think as you're looking through
Yes,
that,
it should be city administrator, HR director, 1 member of personnel committee, and 1 member of council.
and as you're looking through that, I think Brian is still on the line, but I think we asked for a clarification on what a quorum is. And a quorum of the city council is 4. A quorum of a committee, because we have our committees set up, committees of 3, 2 is a quorum. So that it has to be it has to be public. And so and then also I think I would refer to our city attorney to clarify, but I think we had some discussion early on about, not too long ago, about if the information is, can we keep some information from the public and not others if the meeting is open? And the answer was no. All the information that you put in, you can't redact anything because it's public. And the public has a right to see these things and hear these things and ask questions if they want. So please continue, Councilor Paulson.
Okay, so this is actually different than what we received last week, because last week we discussed it was the mayor
Yeah.
and one other, or, so this document is
We had
different.
modified it in October 2019 to this.
So the
with the
last
same discussion.
The last document that was in our packet was inaccurate for our
Inaccurate.
discussion.
Yes.
So that's concerning to me, because that's what was put forward last week. And that's why we are here today to have this conversation. So if this is the new updated one,
Correct, that we updated in October of 2019.
and I really would have appreciated that clarification.
And we were all involved in that, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right, and I think it was just changed in 2018 or
19.
19. Okay, so that being said, I still think we need to address that issue as a council. Number 6, I would like to see interview questions be submitted by counselors. And not that the interview questions are bad that we've had, but I think that they could be a little bit more diverse. They're a little bit just kind of generic. So I'd like to maybe see if we could do a round robin of submitting questions and then coming up with a set grouping of questions. And number 7, okay, on number 7, I think that there should be more than just what's there. on the oral interview, and I would not mind if that oral interview was made public, because that's basically the last go-around before that employee would be hired.
There's 2 oral interviews. There's a first interview and a second interview.
Second one is,
The second one's full council,
Which is
First
open to
one.
the public,
correct.
right?
And first one was listed as 1 member of personnel, 1 member of council. Do we want to change it? Maybe the first one's just the personnel committee? So it's 3 members of the council? It would be an open meeting again, but that way there's more members of the council coming involved in being part of it.
I mean, I think, I would like to hear what other people have to say. I just wanted to bring forward my concerns with this process and the fact that the last document we got last week is not what our actual policy was, and I didn't read this over as carefully, thinking and assuming that it was the exact same document as last week, when in fact it's not. It's the updated document. So maybe just some fine tweaks, but those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't look at what was passed out. I looked at the personnel policy that's currently in place. So let's go to Counselor Johnson and then over to Counselor Bearable. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one of the things I would like to see is that the personnel chair not be named specifically. I don't think that's necessary at this time, because why does that one person have the weight of 2 counselors? So it says, under non-representative,
Step 3.
for example, step 3, city administrator, personnel chair, or 2 counselors. And we all have equal voices, we all have, so I'd like to see that taken out, just because it's not I don't think it's relevant. And this is where our current structure comes in of, do we have committees or not? Because if we have committees, then we have to be aware. If we don't, I guess that's one of the things that, as I've been learning in the year 4 here, we have this meeting, but then we also have these other meetings called when necessary, and I guess that would be one of the things. And if we didn't specifically refer to a committee in here, if it was just a council member or 2 council members, I would be more comfortable with that. And I do agree that especially for the first 2 columns, non-representative department head, specifically indicating that there's a 2-step oral process for those, and dividing it out. It says there may be more than 1 round of interviews. For the first 2, I think there should always be 2 rounds when it comes to for the administrator, the non-representative, and the MAPE. I see Sherry has information.
Sherry, go ahead.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Well, hang on. What's that, Pam?
Please speak up. I have a grater in my window.
Okay. Okay, Pam, go ahead, Pam. Okay, Sherry?
Counselor Johnson, you hit it on the head. If you look at the 2 columns that say non-represented, meaning non-contracted employee, and department heads, which are under MAPE, those 2 columns do have 2 interviews. There's a first and a second interview. For the other ones that are the ASME employee, police officers, fire employees, there may be 2 rounds of interviews. I mean, there may be 2 first and a second, depending on the number of candidates and quality.
So should there be 2 charts then? I'm just asking.
We can list it out that all non-representative MAPE will have 2 rounds and everybody else may have 2 rounds.
Okay,
So we can add that in there.
I think that clarification would help to make sure moving forward, because as councils change, the direction could change. And of course, this can be revised anyway. In 2 to 4 years, one never knows. And then the other question or comment I have is that my understanding is that it is not required at a public meeting that you allow people, it's not a but you can, it's an option, I've seen that. But we could utilize, if someone had questions, they could submit questions in writing to be answered at a later time or something like that.
Yep, and we cannot not, we have to allow them in the meeting, we can allow them not to talk, that we are not taking any public comment or any public input during this meeting, as long as we make that very clear from the beginning, and we would, when we
Yes.
posted it, that, you know.
My understanding
You're
is
welcome
there's
to observe.
some council meetings that actually do that.
There
or
are
if
many
there's a
cities that
special-
actually do that, yes.
Special meetings. So
Yes.
I think if we were doing the interviews as open meetings, that would be a clarity that public comment would be accepted in writing to be addressed at later times, or something like that to expedite the interview process and to avoid that ongoing grilling of someone who might have a personal concern about somebody. So I think those are some technicalities that don't necessarily need to be in here, but we could do if we needed to. And that's all I have for notes right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just before we move to Counselor Baraboo, this is what happens when you get a recommendation from your city staff and the city council picks it apart. That's how we got this hiring policy right now. This is why we have the hiring policy the way it is. This is why it's so convoluted, and this is why there's a problem. Because we as a council, before 2016, we picked this thing apart. We had a nice proposal from city staff, I think I still have it in my files, which laid out all these things that you just talked about today. But no, the city councilor says, no, I want this, or no, I want that. And everybody knows how I feel about committees. I think that it's a waste of time to have three, not a waste of time, but it's convoluted when you have three people on a committee. So when you look at the hiring policy, you take the word committee completely out of there. That's where it was in the beginning. But there's a lot of parochialism involved in wanting to hold a committee chairmanship because it meant something. Well, it convoluted this entire hiring process, and that's where we're at today because we didn't listen to what our staff had to say. And all the questions that you have here and all the things we talked about today was what staff had recommended, but we didn't do that. So we're back where we're at today, and what we're doing here, I think, is meaningful, and I think it needs some significant changes moving forward. So that being said, we'll go to Councilor Baraboo and then back to Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, there's a very simple way, and Mayor, you're correct. The old policy was so much simpler than this. I agree with Steve, though. You get rid of a designation of a member from personnel, or you just leave two counselors, okay? Any two counselors, who cares who they are, for the non-representative and for the union employees, except for the department heads. Department heads is a whole separate thing. It would be just the council. You know, they should have it, but you want 5 people total on that. So when you have your first set of interviews, to pass people along, you're not going to have a tie vote 2 and 2. So you need 5 people, period. You know, who they are, it could be, you can figure it out as department head, somebody from the department that they're going into along with the department head. That gives you 2 right there, 2 counselors and the HR director. Or Brit, however you want to work it. It's simple. And you don't have a open meeting violation with those first ones because you only have 2 counselors on it. The old policy was simple. You're right, Mayor.
What you're suggesting, Charlie, is under step 5 and step 7 that we change it to city administrator, HR director, and 2 council members? So it's so they say up to 3 council members? HR director, city administrator, and 3 council members?
You turn your light on so Fant can hear you.
This is, I'm referring, I'm sorry, to the non-represented and the department heads, supervisor, or MAPE employees. We have first round interviews, city administrator, HR director, 1 member of personnel committee, 1 member of council not on personnel committee. So you want me to change that to 3 council members?
Yeah, 5.
Then it'd be 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not a quorum. Yeah, that's
And just
fine.
leave it vague so that it's not
Leave it vague so you don't have a specific committee that you're dealing with.
even better.
Yeah, take the word committee out of everything.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, Steve was right on that. Leave the designation of committees out of it, then you don't have a problem.
Well, you said committee chair, but I would go a step further, all committee, anything related to committee. Because we can decide as a council who sits on what, and you do indicated a department head to be part of that as well. Because if it's a library director, you gotta have you should have some input from the current library director. Or if it's a park and rec, you gotta have a department head involvement in there. Because the city councilor isn't a jack of all trades or the master of them, because we don't know specifically about public works. So when you design these questions, some of them have to be more specific, as Councilor Paulson referred to, being generic in nature. You want to be a little more specific. And by councilors submitting questions, I think that's vetted out through the process moving forward. So whenever they set up the interview process, we all know what the questions are in advance. So we meet the spirit, intent, and the law, in respect to a hiring process, no discriminatory action by one or another. First, Councilor Johnson has led, and then we'll go over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
I'm good now, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Councilor Paulson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So, so what we're recommending is, and I'm not going to speak for everyone here, but I think what we're really focused on is the non-represented and the MAPE. And the rest of those slots, I think, are okay. Am I hearing that from everyone? Okay.
That's what I'm understanding.
And I think step 5, then, what the recommendation, or what I'm hearing, is that we're going to remove any mention of the word committee and go to 3 counselors, so we have a total with our city administrator and HR director of 5 people at step 5. And that's not saying we don't want a department head coming in, but we're interviewing for the department head on that MAPE side of it, because that's a supervisory position. So maybe the outgoing person comes for a consult or something like that, like we had recommended with Ed. So I like that change. I like where that's going. And then on number 7, when we're doing the first round of interviews, 1 member of personnel, could we change that to reflect more than just 3 of the city council?
Yeah, take the word personnel committee out of there and just, you're pointing how many.
But could
members
first
we
round
want.
interviews be open? Like say we need an odd number, so you'd need up to 5 counselors with HR and admin, so that would be 7.
Right.
And I'm talking about number 7 on the oral interview side of it. And then you could technically white out the candidate's information, couldn't you?
Yes. Could we put it up to 5, so we are not limited that if I don't get 5, there's not enough interest or ability that I can't.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just feel like the more, and I'm not trying to pollute
the more
the
input is
process.
great. No.
I guess even just with me being in that only 1 counselor from that 1 committee, I just didn't feel like there was enough information there. You're better off gathering information with more individuals. So that's my personal experience being part of the hiring process on the personnel committee, and I'm not trying to convolute anything. I just think would be more helpful to get more of a well-rounded feeling from the group even when councils change from different council to different council. People have different thought processes, and I think that this is a great way to engage as many as we can to engage with different thought processes. So I would also recommend increasing, removing the committee title on number 7, but I would also maybe go up to 5 counselors if possible, if everyone would be in agreement on that.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think there's a mechanism in the hiring process. So when you're doing the interviews, the counselors can come to the interview and sit in and listen. They don't, but they can't answer questions, but they can be part of the process, but you don't have 7 counselors asking questions along with your staff. So you do have that inclusion in there.
But I couldn't be there, I didn't think, the last time because it was a quorum when someone else was part of that personnel committee. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think I could actually even be present.
Because we hadn't posted it. So it was.
Yeah, once it's posted.
I think the conflict is this committee thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
And just
take
the
that
need
out
for
of
the
there.
city to post these interviews. And Brian Lindsay's got his hand up.
Okay, sorry.
Yes. Brian has a question? We have our city attorney on the line, Brian Lindsay. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll be brief. I just wanted to make an observation. So as we're having this discussion, the one thing that we've got to keep in mind is that as soon as we have a quorum of the council assembled, it makes a change in the candidates that we're evaluating, because once they sit in front of a body that has the power to appoint, which technically a quorum of the council would, they become finalists, and that changes their status as it relates to disclosure of data in the Data Practices Act.
So if you could clarify a little bit further, Brian, the exposure of this data practice, so if you have initial quorum of individuals from the council that are present at the interview process, that means we have, because there's a quorum of the authority to hire, all that information becomes public, and they're all considered finalists. Is that correct?
Correct. That's once you reach that step, even though they may not technically be a finalist, and while it may just be part of the procedure, there's a strong argument that could be made by somebody who's looking for the data that they've now become a finalist, and all of their application data could become public.
Okay, thank you.
And that, in some cases, can have a chilling effect if we're hiring a lead or a managerial position, and we have an applicant who may be considering a lateral transfer from a different organization. They may not want their name public until they've gotten a little bit further along in the process.
Right, and that's the purpose of having finalists, so all these applicants aren't exposed,
Correct.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. Go ahead.
Yep, and there's nothing improper. I just wanted to make that observation so that we kept it in mind as we discussed.
Thank you very much. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, for that clarification. So then maybe we even deduce it more on step 7 with the first round of oral interviews. We protect, like Brian is suggesting, and then at the second level, because we're probably going to have a second interview process.
Those would be finalists.
Those would be finalists, and Brian, would that be the proper channel then to be, that would be open or public at that second round of it?
Yeah. Well, and I'll reiterate. There's nothing improper about bringing them forward earlier. It just changes their classification of data. But typically, that's the reason why you have a smaller group appointed to initially make consideration. And then when those folks have narrowed it down to make recommendations for the folks that should sit before the entire council for a final or secondary interview, because at that point, then they become finalists. And that's a more traditional point when they would become more public. But as I've indicated, there's nothing improper about the way we're discussing it. It's just, when do we want to change an applicant's classification as far as the release of their data?
So, then from what I'm understanding you saying, so at step 7, oral interview number 2 would be an appropriate time to do that. Because we're not talking about step 5, the initial selection, application selection. We would be talking about the round 2 of the final interview process.
That's a very traditional point to make them a finalist.
Okay, so then that would be my recommendation going forward.
So the first round interviews, we want to just change to city administrator, HR director, and 3 council members? Okay.
That's fine. That sounds good. And then the recommendation by Brian with respect to step 7 is indicated. So Councilor Paulson, please continue.
I would just say then, if Brian feels that this is okay, I would recommend then we go to up to 5, step 7 oral interview 2.
We have full council on here? Do you want me to list? Just think back to when we hired Brian Silver too. At the second interview, we brought everybody in. And,
right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I wanted one more question,
Yes,
clarification.
And I cannot hear you.
Sorry,
Pam?
Pam, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can't hear Julianne.
Okay.
I think she's away from the mic.
I'm in agreement then with bringing the full council in at step 7, round 2 of oral interviews.
And I want to ask one question too while we're here. Since under the non-represented, are we intending to hire the firm under non-represented also? So we'll follow that same protocol for the marketing position, the event coordinator position? Was that everybody's understanding?
Yeah, it's a hiring. Yep, that was
Okay.
be my understanding. And everybody else?
Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, anything else, Counselor Paulson, as of yet? Very good, thank you. Counselor Bearable?
I have a question. Brian, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Brian, the question is, if we go to the second interview in item number 7, where you have all the counselors present, and once we ask the final interview questions, we would be making a decision at that point on who's going to be hired, basically, after the fact, when we've interviewed all, whether it's 5 people, 3 people, whatever it is. That then becomes public at that point, correct? Because you have a quorum of
Correct.
council.
The point when the applicant's information becomes public is when they're considered a finalist. And case law tells us is that you become a finalist when you're sitting before or interviewing with the body or the folks that can make the appointment. So that's why it's my opinion that we've got to be careful about that classification of data if we're sitting a candidate or an applicant in front of the full council at an early stage.
That's my understanding, but once we get to that final interview process, once we make, because we usually have a scoring sheet or some type of thing, once we've scored them and we sit after the fact with all the candidates gone, and we make the final decision who we're going to hire, that's public at that point in time, correct?
Correct.
Which makes it different, because we usually don't announce them till a council meeting.
The final interview is all
Public.
public, as
Okay.
Brian indicated.
That's what I was trying to get
It's
at.
all public
Okay.
at that time, yeah. Okay, anybody else have anything? Counselor Johnson?
Maybe a technicality, but if we are hiring a city administrator, how can a city administrator be involved in the first 5 steps? Because, God forbid, but, or HR, I guess.
Well, it's the retiring or the outgoing city
You
administrator.
would hope that we would be able to assist you with finding a new administrator or as HR director.
But your question is valid, because if it's an outgoing city administrator that's a voluntary leave or retirement, sitting in on that and giving us information is prudent. But if it's a department head that's been removed from office, you can't have that individual serving on the committee. So your point is?
Sherry looks like she has something. I'd be curious.
Okay, Sherry, speak loud enough so Pam can hear you.
Thank you, Mayor. In the past, we went outside and got an outside source to help us hiring.
So should that be put into this rubric, just so that an outside firm could be for the non-represented?
I'm going to use Britt as an example. We used, is it Springwater?
Springstead.
Well, yeah, they're an offshoot of Springstead, but we actually, by council motion, they made a resolution or passed authorization to go out and get an outside firm to help us hire.
It was a search committee.
Yeah.
Right? It was a search committee.
Correct. They did the whole hiring.
So I guess my question is should that be an asterisk on the first one to say potential, that we do have the ability?
Yeah, I think even at the top, in the top paragraph, that the city council reserves the right to hire a search firm for positions that do not fall into these categories, or something like that. We can write something on there.
I think that would be prudent. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Anything else? Councilor Beyondich, any questions, comments?
No, thank you. I've been following my suggestions that are coming forward.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So, Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we are all here.
Speak loud enough there in front of your mic there so Pam can hear you. Speak a little bit louder. Go ahead, Paisan.
I think this was a current council when we sat down at that table to replace or for up at the golf course. Guy and his wife came here. We liked what they did. But my point is, how many did we interview that day?
Carl, you can speak closer to your mic so Pam can hear you.
I got the message
Yep,
here.
you're talking about for the restaurant, and I think we interviewed 5 or 7.
Seven,
firms.
I think
Yeah,
it was
quite
7
a few.
people.
Yep.
And then we came back and we liked the one that we chose. When Brian's position came up, I know I fell in love with this guy. I'm not that kind of a guy, but I thought he was great. So we interviewed some more people. He came back and we hired him. We didn't have to go through all of these steps, 1 through 7 or 1 through 100. Mayor, and Councilor Baraboo helped me with this. In the old days when John Bachman was here, and when Turja and they had the 3 men, and when Ed Alto got where he is today, we interviewed whoever wanted it. We didn't have to sit around for 5 months listening what's the best person for this position. We've changed our whole way of hiring or replacing people in the city. So I guess what I'm saying is I think we're just wasting time. I'd like to see Ed Alto's replacement come from that department. Every one of those guys knows this street with their eyes closed, our town. They could go around with their eyes closed and they could tell you where they are. Where else are we going to get anybody? Duluth, Hibbing, Chisholm? They don't know our sewers, our streets, our departments. So that's how I feel about this replacing Ed Alto.
Yeah, there's some questions that I can answer for you there, Carl, between internal and external postings and those kind of things. But let's hold that thought for a minute. Councilor Beyondich, you have a question?
Thank you, I do. And I appreciate all the conversation about this hiring policy, but Mr. Barnzelli, I was involved in this hiring policy years and years ago, and I think we need more transparency on this. I learned about it firsthand. So I do that we do need more transparency in the hiring policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about the hiring policy here, Councilor Barnzelli, and how we facilitate that, whether it's an internal posting or external posting. We want to have the policy and a mechanism in place in which when we do hire somebody, we're going to be able to follow this policy in accordance with the law in a consistent way, in a clear and concise manner with transparency and as much involvement as we possibly can. I think we're trying to do that today. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the second page of the City of Virginia hiring policy, it states non-regular employees or contractors, and then right to the right, there's a table that says responsible parties. Under the column of independent contractors, could that mirror or reflect the non-represented column at the first page of the hiring policy?
Yes.
So that it mirrors that, because that's what the recommended changes possibly are coming to be?
Definitely can do that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're making all these recommended changes by all the counselors. And I think we're going to be looking at is having staff rework this entire hiring policy and come back to the next committee of the whole meeting
You'll come to the council.
with those recommended
Yes.
changes. So it'll become next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So, excuse me, to the next council meeting on Tuesday. So hopefully you'll be able to make those changes and for additional discussion. I'm assuming that the next council meeting, there'll be much more discussion as well about that. But making these recommended changes are fruitful moving forward. So Pam, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, so,
Mayor?
Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, just a quick question. Britt, can you possibly highlight, when you send this to us on an email, and read the change? Because
Yes.
it's too hard to remember from one to the other without going back and forth
Yes, I
looking at
can.
two different things. I would
I will do the
appreciate.
strike through and the red, the
Yeah,
underlined
I
red
would
line.
appreciate so we can see that when we're looking at before the meeting next Tuesday.
So we're looking at a motion to approve, to approve recommended changes at today's meeting for the hiring policy and to bring that back to the city council on next Tuesday for the consideration of a vote. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Counselor Bearable makes the motion, Pam, to move forward with our city staff reworking the hiring policy with the recommended changes at this meeting for council consideration and approval at the next council meeting. That's the motion. Did you get that? Okay, thank you. It's moved. Is there
Yes,
support?
did you hear me? Sorry.
Support.
Okay, moved by Counselor Bearable and supported by Counselor Friedlieb. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the hiring committee for Public Works Director position. Now that we're changing the policy to be 3 council members for the review applications and for the first round interviews, I would ask the council to consider appointing 3 council members for the Public Works Director position.
Okay, so that the 3 counselors would
In charge of
be
reviewing applications and being on the first round interview
with staff.
with staff.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, did you you want those committee members appointed now?
That would be a great idea.
Okay, so here's the deal.
I think this goes to what Councilor Friedli was kind of saying at the Personnel Committee. It should be people that are, maybe have an interest or have some kind of experience in that area, would maybe want to be the ones to volunteer.
Mayor, I would like to volunteer for that because I've been around the Public Works Department, if we're talking about Ed, correct? For all the years that he's been a member of the staff of the City of Virginia, and I've worked directly with him on policies, so his input would be great for the new hire. So I would volunteer.
Okay, Counselor Bearable volunteers to serve on the committee for Public Works Director position. Is there any other council that has an interest in doing so?
I would. I've had a lot of experience with the school district with hiring people over the decades that I was working.
I could also be on that.
Okay, Counselor Bearable and Counselor Friedlieb and Counselor Beyondich has volunteered to serve on the hiring committee for the Public Works Director position to do these interviews alongside staff. I'm looking for a recommendation for those 3 volunteers.
I'll move those 3 volunteers forward.
Counselor
Support.
Paulson moves those 3 volunteers forward and supported by Counselor Johnson to appoint Counselor Bearable, Counselor Friedlieb, and Counselor Beyondich to sit in on the interview process as part of the hiring committee for the Public Works Director position. Is there any further discussion? Well, let's get her back. Well, the saying boom or bust, it could be changed to Zoom or bust. Okay, so is she back in now? Yeah, let's take a moment while Councilor Beyondich reconnects with us. Go ahead. Okay, we'll take a quick break and until we get back, and then we'll move forward. Thank you. Quick break.
Did you get that, Pam? We're going to take a quick break. So I'm going to run to the restroom. If Maya jumps on, can you kind of let her know?
Yep.
in session for
I
the,
just,
We can hear you now,
I
Pam.
have one comment.
we're back in
If
open,
all of you can talk,
we're back in open
like
session
you
now.
were,
Pam, wait a second now here. Okay, we're back in open session now, for further discussion. Pam?
if all of you could talk as loud as you were during the break, it would be great. Thank you. Because I could hear everyone perfectly.
You have to repeat all that, Pam. We didn't get you.
Reminding everybody to be loud and clear.
Okay, we'll try to be loud and clear, Pam, if we can. We'll try to keep reminding each other to do that. Okay, Counselor Beyondich, are you on the line?
Maya, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Pam, can you hear us?
Yes,
Can she? Okay, thank you. Okay, we did pass that, so let's go to the next item on the agenda. Britt?
The next item is determine the hiring committee for the library director position.
Okay.
I will volunteer for that, Mayor Cuffey.
Okay, Counselor Johnson volunteers to serve on the hiring committee for the library director position. Is there anybody else that would like to volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Counselor Paulson is a volunteer as a city council representative to serve on the hiring committee for the library director position. And I see that Counselor Barnzelli has his hand raised. Can you formally speak into your microphone and say that you would like to serve on that hiring committee for the
I would
library?
like to serve on the hiring of the library position.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 volunteers to serve on the hiring committee for the library director position along with our city staff. And that would be Counselor Johnson, Counselor Paulson, and Counselor Baraboo. And do I have a motion? I'm sorry, Counselor Barnzelli, excuse me, Counselor Paulson, Counselor Johnson, and Counselor Barnzelli to sit on the hiring committee for the library director position. Did you get that, Pam?
yes, I did, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll look for a motion to appoint these counselors to serve on that committee. Moved by Counselor Freely, but is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Counselor Beyondich? Counselor Beyondich?
Can you hear us, Maya? Can you hear us now, Maya? Pam, do you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Maya's going to jump
Can
back
you
in
hear
again. Yep, we can hear you, Pam. Maya's going to call back in again. She's going to get off the Zoom and go back in one more time. Can you hear us now, Maya?
I can.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Beyondich. There's a motion. Counselor Beyondich, there's a motion on the floor, moved and supported, to appoint Counselor Paulson, Counselor Johnson, and Counselor Barnzelli as part of the hiring committee for the library director position. And we had all in favor signify by saying aye, and we're looking for your vote. Counselor Beyondich, can you hear me?
Okay, I keep getting dropped. I'm not sure what's happening, so I missed what you just said.
Okay, I'll repeat one more time. There's a motion on the floor to appoint Counselor Paulson, Counselor Johnson, and Counselor Barnzelli as part of the hiring committee for the library director position. And we've all taken a vote. So far, all are in favor signify by saying aye, and we're looking for your vote.
Oh, yes, I would say aye as well.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the proposed City of Virginia Conflict of Interest Policy. This policy is coming forward because we have a grant with the LCCMR, which is being administered through the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and the Department of Natural Resources is requiring that we have a conflict of interest policy in place in order to access those funds. So I have worked with our attorney, Brian Lindsay, and I don't know if Brian wants to jump in on this policy, which is a very short little paragraph, and then also an example sheet that goes with it that we would intentionally have every committee, or every council member and city employee sign. They've read that information sheet.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Brian, with respect to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my only comment is the reason we structured it this way, it's nice to have just a very simple, straightforward policy statement. And I think our city administrator did a nice job putting together the information sheet. The nice part about having that a bit separate is we can update that without coming back and updating our policy. And it makes it a little bit easier for staff to just keep up to date and keep the most current information contained within our forms.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Counselor Johnson.
I will move the proposed policy information sheet.
Counselor Johnson makes a motion to move forward to approve the proposed City of Virginia Conflict of Interest Policy. Is there support?
I'll support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Paulson for discussion. Further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So on this, I know there's the informational sheet I think is extremely comprehensive, but I just wanted to say that as a board member for the Essentia Hospital Board, they send out electronically a conflict of interest every year that we're required to fill out. Is that something that we could do just even as new counselors come in, and maybe that sometimes policies can get overlooked? So is that something maybe we could renew every year just to make sure that, and I don't know if it can be done electronically, but it was really easy. You just submit yes or no questions. If you do have a conflict, which ROCS sometimes provides retirement gifts to Essentia, so that would be something that I need to disclose to Essentia. So it would give us an opportunity to actually do any disclosures on an annual basis, if that would be a recommendation.
Absolutely, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think that's in my job that I work now, I have to sign a conflict of interest every year too. So on an annual basis, it's important that it's taken care of. Counselor Baraboo?
Yeah, RAMS does the same thing on a yearly basis. We actually have a physical sheet that we have everybody sign at our board meetings. If somebody misses, we give it to them the next board meeting. So you can do it either way, electronically, or I think it's a great idea too.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Counselor Johnson?
On page 2 of the informational, section B, first bullet point, the last word isn't clear. I don't know if it's a printing error or if it's...
Yeah, I saw that too.
So
Should say
that's the
parties.
only...
Yeah.
Yep, okay, I just want to make sure we look at that. Thanks.
I just noted it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich, any comments with respect to this conflict of interest policy?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looking for a motion. Already done? It's been moved and supported to approve and move for the city council for a vote to propose City of Virginia conflict of interest policy. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Did you get that motion, Pam?
I did, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda was a request from Counselor Johnson to discuss the rebate of garbage fees for those businesses impacted by the COVID-19 closures.
Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of our businesses have done zero business in the last 2 months, and I would think it'd be appropriate. I checked with Sherry briefly, and she doesn't see any huge negative, but looking at businesses who have done zero business over the last 2 months and establishing some sort of rebate or credit on their bills. There's not a whole lot we can do as a city, but I would like to refer that to the city staff to check the legalities and come back with a proposal of some sort of rebate for the businesses that we know have been closed. There are some businesses that have been doing some business, and I know it's murky between, they've been open but not as busy, so I don't know if it's just a blanket, what that looks like, but I would be interested in having staff look at that to see what the possibilities might be and bring it back for further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it would be nice to have a list of all those businesses that are affected, how many businesses are affected, for how long has been affected by it, how much far the rebate's going to be, and what's the cost associated with that. So you're asking Councilor Johns for staff to review and put together that proposal for us to review.
That is correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we don't need a motion to do that, do we? Well, we should have one then.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Johnson to direct staff to put together a proposal for a rebate of garbage fees for businesses who are significantly affected by COVID-19, and come back with a proposal with the number of businesses and the costs associated with that. Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? Can I step down to support? Well, I support. Further discussion. Councilor Paulson, then Councilor Bearable.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I just need to state that I would have a conflict of interest with this. So
Yeah, and you wouldn't
that
have
is
to.
why I didn't
you don't
support
have
and
to
why I
vote
would
on it.
not vote for. I mean, I will abstain from voting.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, before we would, I don't oppose it essentially from the comments, but I need to know prior to going forward with this, the number of businesses, the amount of dollars per loss, because we have an enterprise fund that depends on these garbage rates, and if it's going to affect us in a huge monetary amount of dollars, we need to figure out if we're going to get some of that COVID money that we haven't gotten already, some of the CARES money to subsidize this. We need a new garbage truck. We got to have enough money. We haven't instituted the new fee schedule, and that's coming up, I believe, at our next council meeting. So I need to have some numbers before I would vote for this reduction. I don't have a problem with it if we got enough other dollars to cover, because an enterprise fund has to be non-taxpayer subsidized by state law. So that's my issue on that right now. But I won't oppose it if we can find the money.
Thank you. I think Councilor Johnson's motion is to have staff review and determine how many businesses are affected and what the costs associated with that, and then bring that back up for consideration. So the vote today would be based upon that motion. So it's been moved and supported. We've had some further discussion. Councilor Barnzelli, did you have some further discussion?
Yes, Mayor. It's not about the downtown's businesses, but it's homeowner. He said, my garbage rates went way up. It's because you people did away with the blue bag. I said, I don't think it's the reason. The blue bags, the reason is because we have half of our crew from recycling. We're not doing recycling anymore since this, for 2 months now, right? Will we ever go back to
It was
recycling?
because of the blue bag. We got rid of the blue bags, so we had to change our system of garbage fees. So that was why it was increased.
But will we recycle once this thing is cleared? Will we go back to,
Yes, recycling has been stopped because of COVID lives on plastic and cardboard for much
Okay.
longer than it lives on a lot of other surfaces. So we did stop it for the safety of our employees. But there is the free drop service still over.
well, that's what I tried telling this individual. I said, well, would you want to go through everybody's garbage can now with this, what's going on in the world?
Well, I think the question that you're asking is just a little separate from what the vote is today.
Yes.
But to answer your question, with respect to getting rid of the blue bags, as you recall, we all agreed to get rid of the blue bags because
Yes, we
even
did.
though the blue bags are being paid by the people who are complying with blue bags,
Yep.
in order to put money back in the enterprise fund, that was supported by a small percentage of people who were recycling and some who weren't. So the people who were recycling were paying for the bulk of the cost into the enterprise fund. And so when there was no compliance, when you got rid of the blue bags, we increased the rate so everybody pays the same amount of money, whether you have all the commercial pays, all the residential pays, and that keeps our enterprise fund, flush as it can be, in order to accommodate the expenditures for our garbage service that we provide. You could probably tell that to the individual, or he can call me or our staff about that. Primo? Okay. So do you have any comments about Councilor Johnson's motion moving forward? To have staff review the rebate request by Councilor Johnson to put together some numbers and costs associated with that and bring it back to the council for consideration. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich, you have anything more you want to discuss?
We lost her again, and I cannot get her back.
Okay, Councilor Freely.
Well, just a quick comment, and then, I mean, I know business has been reduced, and I don't disagree in concept and principle with what we're considering here. But if any of you have been coming and going to Menards, I mean, they are hopping. So there's a lot of internal activity occurring. People are using this time to paint and remodel and repair. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that the volume of garbage coming out of businesses has been dramatically reduced, particularly in those businesses that have been busy doing that kind of work, just kind of an FYI. My other concern was whether or not staff has the time to engage in that kind of data seeking to provide that information. But again, I don't disagree at all in terms of the concept of what we're trying to apply and the principle behind that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're just asking for, compile the data. If staff has the time to do that, well, because you will, because we're directing you to do so. But, to bring back a proposal for us. We're not voting to do it. We're just getting the numbers back. That was the gist of this motion. Councilor Bearable.
Just make sure when you include the numbers, you take a look at the weight going across the scales for the increase, because people are throwing all their recyclables now into the garbage. So I believe from what I understand, the weights have gone up. So we're paying more for the tipping fees into the thing. I want to see that too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, you have Maya back on the line? Okay, that's fine. Okay, unfortunately. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Pam, did you get that motion?
I got the motion to allow staff to work on the proposal for the rebate of the garbage fees to the city businesses that have been closed during the pandemic.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion
Abstain.
carries.
Abstain?
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion does not carry. Additional discussion. Councilor Paulson.
I just abstained from the vote.
Oh, Councilor Paulson must abstain as a result of that vote. So the motion passes 6 with 1 abstention. Oh, Maya couldn't vote, yeah, excuse me. Motion passes, Pam, motion passes 5 with 1 abstention.
Although it's not official, Maya did text and she can't get back on, but she votes with the last one. So she agrees.
Okay, well, she
Not that
can,
it's official, just wanted to let everybody know she's okay with that.
okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
The last item that I have on the agenda is the review of the COVID-19 preparedness plan for the city of Virginia as ordered by Governor Walz in Executive Order 20-40 on April 23rd, 2020. Each business in operation during the peacetime emergency must establish a COVID-19 preparedness plan. So I've started a plan. It's in your packet. I have had reviews with all the department heads, and I've incorporated all the comments. This is the final version after everybody's made comments and suggestions.
thank you. I reviewed it. I mean, I could make a lot of comments about that, but I'm not, because this is a recommendation after talking to departments. You feel this is a plan that complies with the governor's order and is a solid plan and moving forward. This is your recommendation?
Yes, and please realize this is a ever fluid changing situation, the pandemic itself. And so there may be updates in the future as it comes, but for today, I believe this is where his staff is feeling we could adopt this policy.
Okay, very good. Further comments, Councillor Baraboo, and then on to Councillor Johnson.
Well, I particularly, in this personal opinion, I do not like where the governor is going with all this stuff, period. And I think he's hurting and harming northern Minnesota by not allowing us to open businesses, et cetera. So I don't know how to vote against this policy. I think I'd like to wait and adopt this policy if we don't have to until the 13th of June, when the legislature is either going to authorize them this power again or not.
We have to adopt the policy before we open any buildings
Right.
to the public. So
I don't agree with the policies of how they're going to open these buildings from a standpoint of when you look scientifically at some of this, he's not doing it scientifically. That's my contention on this. So I don't agree with this policy, period. I know you have to do it, but I think it is taking away our individual freedoms of what we want to do as businesses. That's where I'm going. It's going against the Constitution of the United States of what they're doing in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, and I think, Councillor Baraboo, we all have some angst about, the way the situation goes unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon your point of view, the governor's emergency order requires us to do that before we can open up businesses. So I think we need to comply with the governor's order and establish this plan moving forward, because it's going to help. If that helps facilitate the opening of businesses as quickly as possible, we do have an obligation which to do so. I think you understand that as well. And so the purpose, the goal, objective is to look at this policy and plan that's been presented, and have any questions or comments about the plan itself. Like our city administrators indicated, this is an ever-flowing process. We have to make some changes. The governor could tomorrow change it at any time, but we have to make sure we're in compliance in order for us to be able to facilitate any improvements moving forward with the opening of our businesses. But the legislature did not take a vote. They did not pass a law that gives makes them require the governor to get legislative authority in which to extend his emergency powers. The opposite is true. He was given the authority to continue to do so, unlike other states. And so the policy is being, the plan, not a policy, the plan is being moved forward because it's in order to comply with the governor's order. So,
And he was given that just till June 13th, correct? The authority?
13th is Saturday.
well, he has
Up
the,
until then.
there's some changes coming June 1st. He has the authority, he has extended it himself through June the 13th. He could extend it even further without legislative authority.
I don't think so from what I read. He has to have legislative authority after the 13th. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just got an email saying that that's when he may call a special session to deal with that.
Well, what I did was I did have a conversation with Representative Liz Lagarde, and that's what he articulated to me, that they didn't pass a law. And part of the bonding bill that was not passed by on the Republican side, part of the included in that was Representative Dowd had indicated that he wouldn't approve that policy until the governor just so the governor doesn't extend his power. So that's included in the next legislative session for June the 12th. It says also when they're going to have the special session to look at the bonding bill. So that's part of Representative Dowd's amendment moving forward to address that issue. But according to Representative Lizagard, if my understanding was correct, because I asked him that question specifically, they don't have the governor has the authority, doesn't have to seek legislative approval to extend. So.
I'm going to ask Brett one question. The very final thing on there, the flow chart, flow diagram, is that the one we can change independently as we go along on this, Brett? If the governor makes changes, that very last employee flow diagram.
Yep, this is from the CDC. This flow chart follows the CDC's guidelines. So if the CDC makes changes, we'll intend to change our flow chart. But as of today, this is what the CDC is recommending.
And I would move that we review and consider the preparedness plan for the city of Virginia for COVID-19.
We reviewed it. Are we looking for a motion to adopt it?
To bring it to the council next week, yep.
Okay. You moved to move forward the review of the proposed City of Virginia conflict of interest policy for a vote at the next Tuesday council meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you get that motion, Pam?
Yes, I did.
It was moved by Councilor Freelieb. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the first page, it just says adopted on XXX 2020. And is there a sunset on this, or will that be according to the governor's decision whether he extends the emergency powers beyond June 13th? So what I'm in effect asking is, how long is our city adopting this preparedness plan, and does it hinge on the mayor's emergency orders?
No, this actually follows CDC.
I mean the governor's.
The
I'm sorry.
CDC guidelines. So if the CDC does a stand down of COVID, then our plan would step down. But they expect this is going to be a 2-year outbreak until a vaccine is done, is what the CDC is saying. So this plan would be in place until we have the authority to step down.
So who gives that authority? I'm concerned that we're following the CDC and not, because when we were told originally that it would go county by county.
That's right.
Through each state, and then the counties would be assessed at the state level. And I feel like, are we talking with the county right now? I mean, the plan looks great, but we're adopting a plan without me understanding if this sunsets or not, or we're just saying it's going to be our continued plan until the CDC changes. I'm not comfortable with that at all.
I think what happened here, if I may, we're adopting the CDC guidelines. The state of Minnesota is adopting these guidelines, and they're including that guidelines in the governor's emergency order. And a codicil to that guideline is that if you don't have this guideline in place or plan in place, then you're penalized for that, right? I mean, there's you have to comply with his order, then you can't open businesses. That was that's inclusive
I can
in that.
appreciate that, but I need clarification on this. We're adopting a preparedness plan here, which I think is extremely reasonable. I'm not saying it's not reasonable. I'm just saying there's nowhere that it's sunsetted. It's just according to CDC.
I suggest maybe we put a date as of December 31st. If not before that, we will review the plan, and I'm just trying out a date any day.
I just think it would be according to when the there's an emergency situation. I mean, this COVID-19 could morph into COVID-20 or something else. I mean, I don't agree with doing this, and I would have it in accordance to the governor's emergency stay-at-home or stay safe Minnesota orders, that this plan would be in place. I do not feel that we should implement this plan on a continual basis according to what the CDC says. I don't agree with that at all.
What we could put in there is a guideline saying that because the governor's order is tied to this, as soon as the governor's emergency declaration is expired, then this plan expires.
I would be comfortable with that only if, I would be comfortable with that, but I would also like county by county to have input on that plan.
Like, 'cause the
mean on
reason
our
why this
plan?
is- yeah.
No, I just mean like, a blanket statement, we might be staying under an emergency order, I don't know, until August, who knows when. I mean, we just really don't know what the virus is going to do. But I think that according to what they originally were planning, was that it was going to be a county by county assessment. And I have not seen that information come forward. And I know, I think it was, maybe I'm misspeaking, 600 in some cases in St. Louis County. I guess I'd have to review that. But before I'm comfortable putting a plan in place indefinitely, I think we need some clarification on that. And I would be okay with sunsetting it according to the governor's emergency orders, so long as they're not constrictive for what my opinion considers constrictive.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. I agree. So let me ask this question, if I may, Britt. So if we attack that in there, so when the emergency declaration for the governor's office expires, this would automatically expire as well, if we put that in there.
Right. Or I could put the St. Louis County emergency
Right.
order expires, or whatever comes later, or however you guys want to word this.
Yeah, whichever is earlier. But so the question that I have,
Right. And that's totally fine. Yes. Yep.
but the issue for me is that if the CDC guidelines are, if required, and let me ask you, are we required to have this plan in place as an order from the CDC? Or is it a guideline, number one? And number two, if that is a requirement, if we do not put this plan in place, or we sunset it, whether it's the county sunset or the governor's sunset, I'm assuming that the governor's will sunset, and then we will all do that same, would that affect any federal funding we might get? So that's my question. If you put a sunset on here and it goes away, and we don't have that plan in place according to the CDC, are we at risk of losing federal funding?
Every business, before they can open under the governor's orders, has to have a plan in place.
Right, that's number
Before we
one.
can open our doors, which we have requests for meetings of groups of 10 or less, the minors and such, we cannot open those doors until we have a plan in place. So we have to have some kind of a plan. And I am totally okay with putting a sunset date. That is completely fine. I just need clarification. Do we want it to by governor's orders or by county health orders, or how do we want to?
Well, we could put in here by the governor's orders. Well, the governor's declaration, if the county expires after the government, it doesn't matter. But it's tied into the governor's proposal to reopen businesses, right? It's not a county decision, it's a state decision, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I think it should be based upon the sunsetting, my personal perspective, on the governor. When the governor's order sunsets, this thing goes 10/7. I mean, this expires. So anyway, and Councilor Bear, you have your light on.
Yeah, I still can't go along with this. At Almayer, the CDC has made so many mistakes scientifically in this COVID thing. If you look at the science and all this stuff, it's crazy what they've done, and they're way behind the eight ball. The city is not a business. The city is a government entity. It's not a business. He's talking about business that physically
But
have customers.
we have entities in the city that do business. The miners, the senior center.
I understand that, but it's still a different perspective. I can't go along with this at all. I think it's, with what we've got up here, there's just a thing that came out scientifically. They expected when they released some of the guidelines here, the governor just did on a number of things, that the cases of COVID were going to go sky high. They're going to double and triple. They haven't even come close to that since he did that. It's been really, really low compared to what their prediction. Their model is crap.
And our plan strictly deals with how we're going to clean our buildings. We're going to encourage employees to wash their hands. We're going to encourage them to cover their cough. We're going to follow the federal leave model, which expires December 31st. And we're going to request social distancing parameters at all meetings and all events while they're in order.
So once again, I agree that a sunset is applicable unless something mandates and changes. So I think by setting a sunset date, we figure out what that is and under what guidelines we do that. Counselor Johnson, and then back to Counselor Paulson. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to the plan itself. In the last portion, can we put something that the plan will be reviewed within 10 days of implementation, any changes or of hire date, so that we make sure we're keeping ourselves accountable so that someone in a month can't go, oh, I didn't know about that, I didn't see that. Doesn't mean it's not in there. On that page, well, there's no pages, on that last page where it's communication and training. I'd like to see that specified that way, that if there's any changes when we send out that email, we are expecting them to be checking their email at least once every 10 days or something like that. And then the other question is a bigger picture. Can this be a policy that's just about highly contagious diseases in general, or are they requiring that it be COVID specific?
The order says COVID specific, but I like your train of thought that it could be flu, it could be just about anything that we.
Like they had said, if next year there's a COVID-20, this could be, the framework is there for us to adjust accordingly. With all the work that's been put into it, and something could happen up north here where we're being very careful too. So that was, those were my 2 points, and I will be supporting this. I think it makes sense to listen to the people above us, and if we're wrong, I'd rather be wrong on the side of caution than of convenience.
And then for the public's clarification, this is not a policy. We've all referred to it as what's a plan. It's a plan, a moving course. So that can be changed on a regular basis without changing a policy, so to speak. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. So this is a plan and not a policy?
Correct.
Okay. And in that plan, there's actual implementation. So there's some like action steps that I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with. Under social distancing, critical staff that are able to have been relocated to flexible work sites, telework, I get that. Postpone non-essential meetings or events. I think we've done some of that with offsetting some of the committees, or excuse me, the commissions. But I'm not necessarily sure that that would include the commissions by postponing non-essential meetings or events, because we've deemed those as non-essential at this point in time. But what if they need to meet?
They've been using Zoom and GoToMeeting.
Yeah, there haven't been any in-person meetings, but.
I guess I'm just not comfortable with such tight regulations right now. I mean, I know we need to adopt a policy. I would have loved to have seen a policy that works for our city and not a blanket policy that the CDC came up with. I'm not saying I don't appreciate you putting that together, but I just, I think it's a little overbearing. No, I won't be supporting it.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. Counselor Baraboo.
I just have one last comment to make on this. And this is what's wrong with our country right now. One size does not fit all. We have nothing hardly up here in St. Louis County. And the people have been coming up here left and right from the Twin Cities starting in March. And that's documented. And we still have not increased. Duluth has increased, yes. St. Louis County has 3 active cases in St. Louis County, in northern St. Louis County. You have Ely, you have Hibbing, actually 2 in Hibbing now. And that's it up here that have been actually documented. Now that they're saying there's more COVID cases, yes, because they're testing now and people have gone through it and haven't been affected. So I can't support this at all personally. It's hurting our business. We're going to have businesses closing in Virginia, Minnesota because of this. And I'm really concerned. There are steps that all businesses can take. You take a look at some of the restaurants, how they're doing it in some of the places in other states, And it makes perfect sense how they can open every restaurant if they want to with certain precautions. And I just can't support this policy because I think it's crazy. I went through H1N1 flu stuff working in a pharmacy, never got sick. You build your own immunities to stuff too. That's the one thing that they haven't told people that happens. And over time, you don't have any people that aren't affected, and they may build an immunity without even being sick. So I have problems scientifically with this, with all this stuff. So I'm not going to vote for it either.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich, you're back on the line. Counselor Beyondich, are you back on the line?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Did you have any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I've missed out on some, but that's okay. I'll catch up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming back. Counselor Johnson.
I guess I need some clarification, Britt. Does this affect anything outside of the city entity property itself or our employees?
Nope. And
So
this
this
is
does not,
currently what we are doing today.
so we're already doing this. This does not affect Mary Beth's on the corner or Menards or anywhere else. This is
This is strictly
just,
City of Virginia operations.
we're not creating a blanket thing that goes to our borders. This is about our entity as a city, and only our city entity. Has nothing to do with
Correct.
when I walk out of this building, doesn't matter. Okay, I just want to clarify that because it sounds like we're going into this, we're telling people in the city of Virginia what to do and how to live their lives, and we're not. We're covering our own bottoms as a city to make sure we get funding or other stuff in the future.
Correct.
I just want to clarify because I was getting a little confused about that. Thank you.
And this plan, again, to clarify what Counselor Johnson, the plan also is the reason that we're required to adopt this plan, or we're reviewing this, is because in the governor's order, in order for businesses to open up, we have to have this plan in place. So it does affect businesses. If we don't have this plan, we don't vote for it, don't move forward, then the businesses won't open.
City operations.
Right, that's what I meant. I didn't mean private business. The
City
Tennis for All
operations.
facility, the Miners Memorial facility.
Memorial, the senior
all those
center.
kind of things, right.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
But
Counselor
Chief Lewis is on
Paulson.
the line also. Just
Who
want to
is?
put you. Chief Lewis jumped on as well.
Okay, hang on one moment, Chief Lewis. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. Again, I'm not disputing that we need to have a plan in place. I'm disputing the one-size-fits-all plan. On the personal protective equipment side, employees should use protective equipment and good practices to make that space a barrier to infection instead of a conduit. Measures can include providing staff with high-quality disposable face masks and gloves to wear at work, and encouraging healthy hygiene by the CDC guidelines, installing plexiglass or other partitions at service areas, using exterior interior signage, that employees and visitors wear a face covering during pandemic conditions. I just think that I understand this is an internal measure for employees. I've not seen one city employee wearing a face mask in a city truck. Are we providing those? Are they wearing them? Are they?
Provide them. It's their
But they're not
choice.
wearing
We
them.
aren't requiring, we're requesting.
Okay,
So they don't
so-
have to.
I feel like what's in here is not, it doesn't match up for what our city is currently doing, or what and I'm sorry that you might not like what I have to say,
I'm
but
processing this thing.
I don't want to have to put something in place that I feel is over and above the measures that we are currently existing right now as a city. I just feel like this is too burdensome. I'd like to see a different plan developed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Chief Lewis, you're on the line?
Council, Mayor, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Just wanted to do a sound check here. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear and loud.
Excellent. So we have some technology that is working today. I do want to address, first of all, I fully appreciate Councilor Baraboo's concerns. I have my own concerns with the way that the data is being collected and disseminated and then used as far as opening. I believe that this one-size-fits-all approach does not work for our state. The more and more data that comes out, the more and more skeptical I become of the lockdown measures and how this is. That being said, there is a requirement from, and maybe our attorney can weigh in on here too, because as I understand it, there is a liability side to this, that if we do open up anything in the city, and again, I'm speaking in my role as an emergency manager, if we open up things in the city and not properly prepared for it, we expose ourselves to what's known as vicarious liability. So that it comes with a risk. So we do need a plan to address that. Is the current plan perfect? No. I would like to see it a little bit more malleable. Now, I did provide input and feedback on it. So at that time, I think it was the best that we could do. I would like to see something that is very flexible and that allows us to adapt as needed, which speaks to, I think, Councillor Paulson's concerns. But we do need a general outline. We do need to adopt a plan as far as reopening goes. We can't just kind of willy-nilly do this. So I fully appreciate the concerns that were raised, but it is really important that we do have a plan in place. Even if that plan is malleable, even if that plan is flexible, maybe we can discuss a little bit about how those changes can be made, and we want to make it as we don't want to make it cumbersome. We want to make it very, very flexible and adaptable. And there's a lot of things that are outside our control, such as the governor's, direct, and even what the counties are doing in response to that. So I guess I'd stand for any questions on that, and I hope I just conveyed that in the right sense, that we do need a plan. I don't like the way that we've gotten to this point with some of the governor's orders and some of the flexibility that doesn't seem to have been shown into the outstate areas. But going forward, we do have to have something in process. So I'll take any questions.
Chief Larry Cuffey, so my bottom line, pillar at the end of my question to you is, you've had some input on this plan. You may not agree with some of the things, and we don't agree. I don't either. Is this a plan that you think is flexible and malleable enough to make some changes moving forward?
I think that this plan is a good starting point, and we want to have some flexibility to modify it. And I Councillor Paulson's concerns and Councillor Baraboo as well. That if we see things changing or we don't agree with, if we have another 30 days, I can tell you we can't stay in this kind of mode for another 30 days. The community is absolutely going to revolt, as will many other people, because they don't see the data behind the requirements. And there's got to be some significant loosening of those restrictions. So yes, I would support adoption of the plan, along with the ability to modify it as we can, as quickly as possible. We need to be flexible.
Well, I think that's all of our concerns. It's not a policy, it's a plan, and the plan can be changed immediately, if not sooner, by staff and recommendation from the council. I think what Councillor Paulson is asking, and Councillor Baraboo, and I think all of us, we want to make sure that the plan is, we're covering all our bases with respect to our liability and how things move forward. And so I would ask you to comment one more time about this deal with the CDC guidelines that wants us to keep this in place till December the 31st with these recommendations. So the question is, we follow recommendations of CDC guidelines, but this is a plan. We can change that plan at a moment's notice. So give me your thoughts on that. Give us your thoughts on that.
I would not even wait that long until December 31st. I would say have that as a continual agenda item and review it at every council of the whole or city council meeting so that adjustments can be made as necessary, the adoption of the plan. And then that would come forward with your emergency manager and your police chief and Parks and Recs and the city administrator giving input saying, okay, we've modified the plan just a bit. And here's council, here's the approvals, or here's the recommendations to the updates of the plan that we recommend. And then council would literally have the oversight of that each time. So it's a continual thing. It's not an adoption until, well, we're going to have this plan until December 31st. That to me seems like there's way too many unknowns between now and December 31st. So I would keep a rotating agenda item.
Okay, so one more question I have before we move on to the other councilors, that the adoption of this plan, the request to have this plan actually sunset, say for the sake, there was some discussion about having the plan sunset when the governor's emergency order expires and sunsets? And, is it prudent for us to do, for this plan to sunset as well at that time? Or would you recommend, as the emergency manager, we continue to review this on a regular basis? And even if the governor's order is expired, the emergency order expires, there may be other mandated issues. So we continue to put this plan in place. So the question that I have is, how long do we do this? By expiring it at the same time the governor's emergency order expires, does that create an issue for us?
I would say that the plan would then expire at the time that the governor's emergency order does, or, whatever he wants to term it, whether it's stay at home or stay safe at home, or, but at that time that the peacetime emergency order expires, that would really take away the exigency of the circumstances to continue that at all. So at that time, I would recommend termination of anything standing. There's no reason to be more restrictive than the governor's orders. I think it's already been quite restrictive and too restrictive, if you want to ask me.
Okay, thank you. Let's go first to Councillor Johnson, and then to Councillor Paulson, and then to Councillor Baraboo. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the chief's input. What I had written down is, can we review this plan every time we review the furlough status as we move forward? I would think those will be kind of connected as we move forward too, and putting that as part of the plan, I would be very comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Chief Lewis. I do feel that this draft is cumbersome, and I feel like we're mixing plan with policy under the leave. There's COVID-19 leave policies, and I know that the City of Virginia has implemented the federal leave policies, but we're putting policies into a plan, and those policies are going to probably change regarding the governor's orders again. So we're mixing policies within a plan, and I'm just not, I think there can be a safe plan put into place, just not this constrictive or cumbersome. I feel like we're mixing policy and plan.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Baraboo.
Yeah, they talk about the liability. The fire chief talked about liability. So what's to prevent this from going further? You've got the flu. What's the liability there of a business? I don't think any business has a liability when it comes to a disease process. You've had diseases for thousands of years, and you've never had liability problems with suing over issues like that, unless there's been a faulty medical thing through a clinic or a hospital, but not for somebody getting sick from an unknown virus or bacteria or whatever it might be. There's been thousands of them over the years. It's crazy to have any liability over this, except maybe when you had some of these issues with putting COVID people in nursing homes, those type of liabilities.
And I think to the Chief's point, the liability is going to come from defying the executive order. If we choose to defy the executive order, we might be put ourselves in a position of liability.
Okay, thank you.
I still didn't get my question answered.
Okay, well, please answer it again.
There's a mixture of plan and policy implemented within our plan. And I don't understand how, if we're saying it's just a plan, how we can put policies in here. Emergency paid leaves are in here. There's actual policy in this plan. So we're saying this is a guideline, but you're putting policies within the plan.
And I'm sorry, Councilor President, I did write it down as something to address in the plan, so I will take that out. And so it's not trying to make it a little less cumbersome.
I just think that we should go through this. We should have had a meeting with our emergency management coordinator to talk about what this looks like. I feel like what part of it came from the CDC, what part of it came from the governor's executive orders, what part of it came from internal policies or federal guideline policies, and we're putting this long draft together. I understand we need a policy. I truly understand that. To open up any of our city buildings, I understand we need a policy. This is combining federal, state, some of our own city, probably our own city policies, the CDC guidelines. It's not making much sense to me as to how we arrived to this. And I understand, I think Chief Lewis was a part of this. I appreciate the time you spent doing this, but I feel that we should have had opportunity to give input and to understand part of the rationale behind putting this plan together.
Okay, well, I think in answer to your question, Councillor Paulson, maybe it would be prudent for us to, we're looking at the plan, we're reviewing it, maybe we should have a meeting with our emergency management coordinator and have a meeting specifically for this particular topic and answer those questions, get those clarifications that you are seeking. I think it's important for us all to have an understanding about that. I would look for...
Appreciate that happening.
We don't have any other lights on, so I would be looking for, we have a motion on the floor to move forward with the plan. Who made that motion? Councillor Friedlieb, and I seconded it, is that correct? Okay, so,
Councillor Johnson seconded the motion.
okay, moved by Councillor Friedlieb and seconded by Councillor Johnson. You know, would you read back the motion, please, Pam?
What I have is moved by Councillor Friedlieb, supported by Councillor Johnson to adopt the COVID-19 preparedness plan for the city of Virginia. That's all I really have.
Okay, so you're making, the request was approved moving forward to the council. I think that, I mean, I suppose we have to vote on that, but we could,
No, you can table it ahead of the vote.
there's two things we could do. We could table it, not vote on the motion, or, and we could continue with the motion and have a meeting before next Tuesday and to really discuss this plan before you make a decision moving forward. So by doing that, we're not delaying the process. We're getting the plan in place as quickly as possible, but at the same time, making sure that we have a plan that we all can agree with and that's suitable for us with some clarification. So we could move it forward and have a meeting before next Tuesday to clarify that, and therefore that motion stands, goes to the city council. If we all have our clarification before that, we have a better educated opportunity to make a vote. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody?
No,
Okay, so let's,
I'd rather see it tabled for now.
well, you can,
And then have the meeting, and then you can still bring it up at the council meeting. But I'd like to see us have that meeting. I agree with that portion of this ahead of time.
what is the councilor's pleasure on that?
I believe if I made a motion to table and somebody supported that original motion, it would be tabled until we have that meeting. So I'm going to make that motion.
Okay, Councilor Berbo makes a motion to table. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, opposed?
No.
No. A motion passes 4-3. So it's I'm sorry, I can't take that back. We can't take a vote, right? We didn't have any discussion, right?
No
Okay,
discussion.
So a motion passes 4-3.
So then we should set up a meeting date through the administration.
That's the
and
next
adopt
step here.
this. That's the
That's the next
step.
step here, to set up a
I don't
meeting.
think we need a motion for that, do we, Brett?
You could just get with Pam immediately, let her know your availability. That would be wonderful, so she can set up something.
So should we just see what
Yeah,
dates?
yeah,
right
we'll have
now?
Pam reach out to everybody.
Yeah, you'll, so Pam gets all that.
Excuse me, Mayor.
She probably didn't get that. Yes, Pam?
You said the vote passed 4-3.
The tabling motion.
Table.
There was a
Okay.
motion to table. Counselor Bearable made the motion to table. It was supported
Table. By Paulson
yes?
to table. Okay. And it was not approved by, not everybody agreed to that?
Right,
I
the
guess-
tabling motion passed 4-3.
Okay, and who did the roll call?
We're doing that right now.
Okay. All right. Bearable,
Yes.
Friedlieb,
No.
Friedlieb,
No.
Paulson,
Yes.
Beyondich,
Yes.
Johnson,
No.
Johnson,
No.
did he say no?
He did say no.
Baranzelli,
Yes.
Cuffey.
No. A motion passes to table 4-3. Yeah, she voted already. Yeah, she did, yep. But good thing to check, good thing to check. Yes, so, all right. Britt?
Yep, and if everybody can get with Pam, or Pam can send out some dates for meetings. I know it's not on the agenda, but I do have one other item I do want to discuss. Pano Gold is looking at buying a lot on 14th Avenue in the industrial area. They're looking at buying 2 acres out of a 6-acre parcel, and so they were wondering if the city was interested in assisting with a business subsidy. There's a process for it, but before I put a lot of effort into that process, I wanted to know if the council was interested in doing something like that before I started that.
Well, Counselor Freely.
Well, I guess I hadn't left that previous conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. The previous conversation was about,
The plan.
Okay.
Or the policy, I guess, so it got convoluted, which is very typical with this body.
very much so.
And maybe justifiably so. I'm not saying that's not the case.
Point of order, Mayor, this has been tabled.
Yes, that's right.
Oh.
We can't discuss it any further.
Oh.
Thank you, Britt. So,
So with Pan of Gold,
yes, let's move on to that subject.
I guess the extent of the subsidy is what I would want to know. Like, what are we seeking to do on their behalf that would be costly to the city over the long haul?
And that would be for discussion. I just need to know if there's interest at all, because I can start working on something with them. I haven't even discussed a dollar amount, and I haven't discussed anything with them. We previously were going to give them a lot that was valued at $30,000. That lot was subsequently contaminated and not worth the money required to remove all the fill that would be needed for their building placement.
Well, in the What It's Worth department, I guess I value and seek your counsel and your recommendations that are brought to the council.
Mayor, I agree with letting Britt go forward with a possibility of a subsidy for that business. We did have a place for them and we reneged on it, so.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Johnson?
That was going to be my motion, was to direct staff to work within the guidelines of what we've offered previously, and also help them with any other possible support that may come from other entities within the city or IRRB.
Okay, thank you. You need a motion? Okay, direction moving forward. Okay, anything, Counselor Paulson?
This time, Mayor.
Okay, Counselor Barnzelli?
Britt, is that a commercial or residential property?
Industrial,
Oh, so it's
Industrial
worth
side.
30,000, eh?
yes, yep.
Counselor Beyondich, any questions, comments, or concerns about the Pano Gold? It looks like the majority of the council has agreed to allow staff to move forward with seeking some options to help out the Pano Gold.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anything else from you, Britt? Sherry, did you have anything?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like some clarification on the wage differential that we've done for the library director, interim library director. Is it my understanding that he's only getting the extra $5 while there's employees there? I think we should think about that because he's managing the construction there, which is a 6-week project, and he's there regularly. So I would like to ask staff to make sure that, because right now there's no employees and there won't be theoretically until the end of July, but he's still there, he's still working, he's checking in books, he's keeping the library maintained. So I'd like to figure out if there's some way within contracts and union constraints that he is getting something for managing the library still and the construction project, which he was here earlier, and I'm sure that's why he disappeared without his coffee cup, because there was an issue somewhere, so, and if I need to make that motion, I will. So I would move to direct staff to make sure that the interim library director is being compensated accordingly for his construction and building management time.
I'll support for discussion.
Moved by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Paulson for discussion. Did you get that motion, Pam?
Mayor.
Thank you. Motion, further discussion, Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I had sent an email out to Sherry and to Britt regarding some of the, I think it was the CARES, the federal CARES dollars that potentially the city of Virginia would be receiving between $400,000 and $700,000, I think was the email. And in our EOP, it does state that we can pay out of those funds additionally for, like, say, for Brian or for our fire chief, Chief Lewis, for this, during this time of management. And I had asked Britt and Sherry to maybe visit that. So I don't know if you would be comfortable including Chief Lewis in that motion, but I just, okay.
I would amend my motion accordingly.
And I'll amend my support
Okay.
to include looking at those two.
I completely went over my head. So the motion was to,
So my motion is to direct staff, amended to make sure that we are appropriately compensating Brian as the interim library director as he's, because everybody else is
Right,
laid off.
right,
To do
right.
that, and then look at the time and what Chief Lewis is doing above and beyond it. We've appointed him because of the nature of this, this emergency. He was appointed as the emergency operations director, and if there's something we should be doing when it comes to compensation with that, as opposed to if it was some other type of emergency. So just look at it and see if there's anything we should or can do, and move forward accordingly. Just because, I could hear in Chief Lewis's voice today, again, we were discussing the COVID, and I'm guessing Britt said, "Hey, we need you." He showed up, and I just think we should be looking at that. I agree with Councilor Paulson when it comes to that. There's been a lot of work, and if it's dollars that we're getting to help cover that, I would like that looked at.
okay, I understand now, and then the motion up. Pam, now, did you get that motion with the amendment?
I believe so, to direct staff to appropriately compensate Brian during the time the library is closed and staff is on furlough, and to also include Chief Lewis during the COVID-19
Yeah,
additional compensation. Is that kind of the gist
yeah.
of it?
Yeah, as his duties and responsibilities as the emergency management director.
And bring it back to the council for final
Yeah,
approval.
we'll have to have a letter or memo of understanding with the union, with MAPE, but we will get that prepared.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed?
Aye.
Aye, okay, opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right, been a long meeting, very productive meeting, so we're gonna be scheduling some meetings in the future before the next council meeting about this plan, correct? Okay, very good. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up before we adjourn the committee of the whole meeting? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. We'll adjourn this meeting at 12:11 PM.